I didn't bother explaining anything to anyone. I didn't care what outsiders thought of me. But I appreciated Sun Geely's genuine concern, even if I disagreed with her advice about having a baby. Let's talk about kids some other time, Sister Sun. Teach me how to make shoes instead. She dropped the subject and started the lesson. It's really simple. Someone as smart as you will pick it up right away. Reality proved otherwise. I spent the entire afternoon and couldn't make a single proper shoe. I understood every step she explained, but my hands refused to cooperate. When I stuffed cotton padding, it came out lumpy and uneven. When I cut the shoe pattern, it was always lopsided. And when I tried to sew the sole, I couldn't even push the needle through. I set the shoe down, feeling deflated. Sun Geely smiled gently. It's your first time. You're already doing well. If you really can't learn, I'll make them for you. Or you can trade with the villagers. Besides, look at your soft, delicate hands. They're not made for this kind of work. No wonder Commander Shin spoils you and won't let you do chores. Hearing his name made my mood worse. I'd wanted to learn shoemaking to better fit into this world. But the truth was clear. I'm not from this era. I can't fully belong here. Just like my marriage to Shin Mingjung. If I can't reach his heart, there's no point continuing down that road. Once I accepted that, my natural carefree attitude returned. You're right, Sister Sunday. I'll skip the shoemaking. If you have time, could you make me a pair? I'll trade you salted duck and goose eggs. She agreed, knowing I wouldn't accept charity. Then she mentioned something that caught my attention. In a few days, the annual winter hunting period starts. Commander Shen is an excellent shot. He always brings back the most game. What do you like to eat? I'll tell him to get extra. What's the winter hunting period? She explained that everything in the mountains belonged to the state, but because conditions here were so harsh, families going hungry in winter, some people having starved to death in earlier years, there was a special 10-day rule. 7 days were for organized military and commune hunts, and the remaining 3 days were open for individual families. Whatever you caught during those 3 days was yours to keep. My mind started racing. I'd been eyeing the mountain game for a while, but knew hunting outside the approved period would cause trouble. With this winter hunt, I could stock up on meat and store it in my space. That might even solve my cooking oil problem, animal fat. I asked more questions, and Sun Geely shared the details. She warned me that the mountains had dangerous predators and told me absolutely not to go alone. Families usually sent their men in groups for safety. She mentioned we could go together to gather nuts and pine seeds from the outer edges of the mountain, though villagers usually picked those areas clean. Going deeper was out of the question. Someone had tried once and never came back. The search party only found scraps of clothing and bones. I headed home after getting all the information I needed. The house was empty. I didn't know whether Shin Mingjung had taken Xiaojun to the base or sent him to Zhangsu aliens, and I didn't care. The quiet suited me perfectly. For dinner, I made chive pockets. I'd traded for a small amount of chives recently. The farmer said it was the last batch of the season. I mixed the filling with scrambled eggs and seasonings and made 6 in total. 3 I wrapped up and stored in my space, where they'd stay perfectly fresh indefinitely. The other 3 I fried in the big iron wok. The aroma was incredible. I'd just finished eating when Shin Mingjung and Xiaojun returned. He smelled the food the moment he entered the yard, and knowing I was home seemed to relax him somehow. He checked the kitchen, then found me in the bedroom drawing. He stood watching me for a moment, but didn't interrupt. Then he went back to the kitchen. Just like at lunch, the wok was clean, the table empty. I'd cooked only for myself again. He sighed and started making dinner. He kept it simple. Stir-fried potato slices, a boiled egg for Xiaojun, and some steamed cornmeal buns. Xiaojun barely touched anything. He ate the egg, then put his chopsticks down. The cornmeal buns scratched his throat, and he didn't want them. He figured he'd just go hungry tonight and eat well at Anitsuilian's tomorrow. Shen Mingjing tried to get him to eat more, noting that the boy was shorter than kids his age, but much heavier. His pickiness was getting worse. Late that evening, Shin Mingjing returned from handling an emergency at the base and found I'd already bathed, heating the water myself this time. I didn't need him for anything. He looked at me, clearly wanting to say something but holding back. I ignored him and laid out my bedding. Are you angry with me? He finally asked.
I didn't respond.
He just stood there, uncomfortable with my silence. As I was spreading the blanket, he suddenly grabbed my hand. I yanked it away immediately. I was planning to divorce this man. Holding hands was not part of that script. His patience finally cracked. What exactly do you want? I turned and looked him straight in the eye, my voice dead serious. I want a divorce. My expression and tone when I said, I want a divorce, were exactly the same as when I told him I don't agree to the divorce, back at the hospital. That consistency seemed to rattle him. His brow tightened. His eyes went cold. I told you, you only get one chance. I'm not the type to back down from pressure. Chances are made, not given. Dingy, what do you think marriage is? A game. Is that okay with you? That pushed him over the edge.
Good.
I wanted him angry enough to sign the papers right now. I started making my bed, but instead of placing my bedding in the middle of the platform like usual, I pushed it to the far edge. He saw what I was doing. He understood. He fought to control his anger and tried to speak calmly. Explain yourself. Why do you want a divorce? I could see the stubbornness in his eyes. He wouldn't drop this until I gave him a real answer. Shen Mingzheng, do you trust me? He wasn't expecting that question. But then his mind went back to what I'd said that morning. If I say no, would you believe me? Something clicked. You're angry because I didn't believe you. I shook my head. I'm not angry. I just don't want to continue. What I want in a partner is someone who trusts me completely. Someone who stands behind me no matter what happens, who supports me and gives me strength. You can't do that, he tried to explain. But Xiaojun said you pinched him, and he's never lied before. Exactly. So you trust his word over mine. That's my point. I said I'd investigate. If Xiaojun lied, I'll make it right. I smiled bitterly.
If.
You said if. So deep down you still think his version is more believable. Shen Mingzheng, the marriage I want is one where two people can weather any storm together. Where no matter what happens, each person is willing to entrust their back to the other. Where even if I held a knife pointed at his heart, he'd stand still without flinching because he believed I would never hurt him. He stared at me in disbelief. My words clearly shook something deep inside him. On the battlefield, he could trust his comrades with his life. But even with his most trusted fellow soldier, if that person held a knife to his heart, would he just stand there? Would he still trust them?
No, he wouldn't.
He'd never imagined marriage could demand that level of faith. He'd never seen an example of it. Every couple he'd ever known, in his village growing up, in the family quarters now, they all just muddled through life arguing and compromising. Nobody divorced over a lack of trust. Nobody even talked about trust like this. His silence told me everything. We weren't the same kind of people. What I wanted, he couldn't give. I was done talking. It had been a long day, and I was exhausted. As I moved to get into bed, he grabbed my wrist again. His fingers landed right on the scar from the original Ding Yi's suicide attempt. Looking at that scar, he asked quietly, "Everything you just described, can that man do it?" It took me a second to understand what he meant. Then I felt his grip tighten over the scar, and it hit me. He was talking about Yang Zhiyong, the ex-boyfriend. I exploded. I ripped my hand free. Shen Mingzheng, are you serious? Something goes wrong, and instead of reflecting on yourself, you drag someone else into it? Are you even a man? His expression was grim. I'm only asking one thing. Are you divorcing me to go back to him? I understood where this came from. The original Ding Yi had demanded divorce countless times, always because of Yang Zhiyong. Even after I'd sworn to start fresh, here I was asking for divorce again. Of course, he'd think history was repeating. But I was too furious to be reasonable.
Yes.
That's exactly it. I'm going back to him. So hurry up and agree to the divorce. Stop wasting my time and my youth. Part of me was just lashing out in anger. The other part genuinely wanted to speed things up. If we divorced now, I could start preparing independently for the political storms coming in 2 years. But I didn't realize how deeply those words cut him. His chest heaved. His eyes burned into mine. Finally, he spoke through clenched teeth. Ding Yi, since you chose to come here with me, you will abandon all other thoughts. Otherwise, don't blame me for what I do. Then he turned and walked out. He left because he was afraid of what he might do if he stayed. I couldn't believe it. Even after I said all that, he still wouldn't agree to divorce. I lay on the bed, fuming, unable to sleep. Xiaojun heard us fighting through the walls. He was scared but also a little happy. The night was quiet enough that our argument carried to the neighbors too. They couldn't make out the words, but that didn't stop the gossip. Luo Xiofan was practically giddy in her yard, slapping her thigh with glee. Oh my, Commander Shin is finally going to deal with that woman. She's had it coming. Zhao, do you think they'll divorce? Her husband didn't bother answering. She didn't care. She was too busy celebrating. Shen Mingzheng didn't come home all night. I barely slept. The next morning, people kept, casually, walking past our gate, hoping to catch some drama. I ignored every single one of them and went about my day. Since divorce was the plan, my priority was building a foundation for survival on my own. The political movement in 2 years would be terrifying. I needed to protect myself and my family. Worst case, we could flee into the deep mountains and hide until the storm passed. There was another option, going to Hong Kong. But I didn't want that unless absolutely necessary. In my past life, I was a researcher at an important national department. Every breakthrough I made belonged to the country. Foreign teams tried to recruit me, with huge salaries, more than once. I always refused, because I love this land. Even though I want to live as a lazy, comfortable nobody in this life, and even though this is technically an alternate history, the trajectory is similar enough. I can't help but love this place. I want to watch this country. I love walk step by step toward dawn, toward a stronger tomorrow. To get some peace and quiet, I went into my space. I'd been so busy stockpiling winter vegetables that I hadn't properly explored the space bracelet's capabilities. The grains I planted yesterday had already ripened, so I wondered, would fruits and vegetables grow the same way? I ate an apple and a piece of durian, then tossed the seeds on the ground. Within seconds, they disappeared into the soil, sprouted, and grew into full trees. Flowers bloomed, then fruit appeared. In just minutes, both trees were loaded with ripe fruit. I grabbed a durian and cracked it open. Golden, dry-textured flesh, the best kind. Sweet, crisp, and absolutely perfect. I devoured several and threw the seeds everywhere. But one seed, I tossed a bit too far. It just sat there on the surface, no sprouting, nothing. I tried again in the same direction. Same result. I investigated and discovered the soil over there was much drier. Walking back toward where the grains grew, the ground got progressively wetter. After about half an hour of walking, I found a small puddle. I dug at it with my hands and got the shock of my life. Water started bubbling up from where I dug, more and more, pooling into a small pond. I dug a couple more times and it kept coming, almost forming a stream. I wet a durian seed and tossed it back to the dry area. This time it sank into the soil immediately and grew into a full fruit-bearing tree. Is this a spirit spring? I muttered to myself. What kind of spirit spring makes you dig it out yourself? That's the most ridiculous entrance I've ever heard of. But I had to hand it to Director Zhang and his research office. This upgraded space was incredible. Next time I die and end up in the underworld, I'm definitely working under him again. That boss actually takes care of his people. The spirit spring could make any plant grow instantly, and it never ran out. That meant I had an unlimited food supply. I also noticed something amazing. Even though the temperature inside the space wasn't tropical, the durian trees still produced perfect fruit. Climate didn't matter here. I could grow anything from anywhere. I immediately started planning. One section for fruit trees, one for grain, one for vegetables. Soon the area around the spring was fully planted. Exhausted and thirsty, I sat by the spring and scooped up some water. The moment I drank it, my eyes lit up. It was cool, sweet, and the second it hit my stomach, warmth spread through my whole body. My energy came rushing back. Even my mental power for painting felt stronger. I thanked Director Zhang again in my heart. I started planning further. I needed shelves and racks inside the space for dried vegetables and supplies. I actually dreamed of building a full modern house in here with automatic appliances, so I could live as a lazy bum in luxury. but I'd already tested the limits. Anything requiring chemical processes, plastics, steel, metal components, I couldn't create. Electrical appliances needed metal parts that involved chemical processing, so those were impossible too. What I could do was build wooden structures. I planned to construct a few straw huts and set up cooking areas. That way, if danger came, I could bring my family inside the space, and we could live here comfortably for years if needed. After our fight, Shen Mingjing didn't come home for several days. Without him, Xiaojun didn't come back either. I enjoyed the solitude. I spent those days organizing my space, mapping out where to build a house, a painting studio, even a playground. I made shelves and cabinets and stocked duplicates of useful items. I also had a bold idea, testing whether animals could survive inside the space. I could live here indefinitely, but I wasn't sure about other living creatures. Then in late October, a cold front swept through. The temperature dropped sharply. Sun Geely came over that morning with the cotton shoes she'd made for me. They fit perfectly, warm and comfortable. I gave her 5 salted duck eggs and 5 salted goose eggs in return. She tried to refuse, saying it was too much for just sewing work. I insisted, telling her the eggs were also for her son Pidden, who was too skinny and needed nutrition. Then she asked something that caught me off guard. Will Commander Shin be back today? He's been out on a mission. I blinked. I don't know. He didn't tell you how long the mission would last. No. He's not obligated to report his schedule to me. She hesitated. You two still have it made up? I nodded. No point lying. There were no secrets in this family quarters. He hadn't just failed to tell me when he'd return. I hadn't even known he was on a mission at all. I had to hear it from someone else. That stung a little, but I quickly pushed that feeling down. Feeling bothered meant I still cared about him, and that was not the direction I wanted to go. I was going to be my own heroine, standing on my own 2 feet, living brilliantly with or without a man. Sun Geely tried to give me advice. A woman needs to be soft sometimes. Men work hard all day. If they don't come home to a warm wife, hot food, and a cozy bed, why would they bother coming back? Commander Shin's career is only going up. Sticking with him is the smart move. Tomorrow's the start of winter hunting season. If he's back from his mission, he'll be leading the troops into the mountains. Hunting is even harder than regular training. When he gets home, just soften up a little, say something nice, cook him a good meal, and this whole thing blows over. My eyes lit up, but not for the reason she hoped. Tomorrow is the winter hunting season? She looked exasperated. Out of everything she'd said, that was the only part one heard. After she left, I started preparing. I remembered seeing bamboo rabbit traps on an online shopping site in my past life. I drew several from memory, materialized them, and rigged simple spring mechanisms with wire so the doors would snap shut when triggered. I also made a bundle of thin rope for snare traps. Everything went into my space. My space was really coming together now. I'd built shelves and stocked them with bowls, plates, kitchen utensils, everything I'd traded for from villagers. The only thing missing was a cooking pot. I'd buy one next time I went to town. That evening, just as I was going to bed, Shen Mingjing came home. After days apart, there was an awkwardness between us. I glanced at him, then treated him like he was invisible. I climbed onto the bed platform and closed my eyes. I'd moved my bedding to the far edge, but now that it was getting cold, I took the warm end near the fire. What I didn't know was that he stood watching me for a long time. His anger had faded during his days away. He'd spent every free moment thinking about what I'd said about trust. My words had shaken him more than he'd expected. He sighed, went outside to wash, and came back to lay his bedding next to mine. I opened my eyes immediately. We sleep on opposite sides. If you want this end, I'll move. My coldness clearly hurt him. It felt like we'd gone back to the beginning. Every time he got close, I pushed him away. When he didn't move, I got up to relocate my bedding to the cold end. He grabbed my blanket, stopped me, and moved his own bedding to the far side instead. I lay back down without a word and fell asleep thinking about tomorrow's hunt. He barely slept. He kept glancing at me. He'd only gotten 3 or 4 hours of sleep each night during the mission, and he was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't stop. He'd realized something during those days away. When he first agreed to marry me, it was because I was pretty and educated. When I kept demanding divorce, he refused because it would hurt his career. But now, his reason for not wanting divorce had changed. He liked living with me. Since I'd come to the base, life had become interesting. He looked forward to coming home every evening, cooking together, eating together. Even doing most of the housework didn't bother him. He didn't sleep all night. At dawn, he left for the base. Today was the first day of winter hunting, and he had to lead the troops. After he left, I got up, made myself malted milk powder and boiled eggs. I packed extras in my space along with some salted eggs, a bowl of northeastern soybean paste, and my iron shovel. They say the Northeast has 3 treasures: ginseng, sable fir, and deer antler. These steep mountains might have wild ginseng. I couldn't paint it because I'd only ever seen cultivated ginseng. I didn't know what real wild mountain ginseng looked like. If I found one, I could paint copies forever. I went into the mountains on day 1 for 2 reasons. First, I didn't want to depend on Shun Mingzheng. Second, the first day would have the most game. Once the military and commune hunters swept through over the next week, animals would become scarce and much more cautious. This was my first time on an undeveloped wild mountain. In my past life, I'd only hiked tourist mountains like Taishan and Huangshan. Luckily, it was nearly winter, so snakes and bugs were mostly gone. Without my space as a safety net, I'd never have dared come alone. The mountains were genuinely dangerous, and I respected that. I walked and observed, looking for signs of wild chickens or rabbits, footprints, droppings, scratched up ground. But after over an hour, I found nothing. Just as Sun Geely had said, the outer areas were picked clean by villagers. I pushed deeper. Whenever I got tired, I ducked into my space, ate some fruit, drank spirit spring water, and instantly recovered my energy. Then I kept going. By late morning, I finally spotted wild chicken tracks. The claws looked similar to domestic chickens, but larger and rougher from years of foraging in the wild. I recognized them from animal books I'd read in my past life. No knowledge is ever wasted. I used my shovel to dig several small pits nearby. In each one, I set up a rope snare with a slip knot, tied the other end to a tree, and scattered millet around the area, a little outside to lure them in, more inside the trap, to keep them there. I set up several of these traps, hoping to catch some wild chickens. To avoid scaring the wild chickens away, I hid inside my space to wait. I pulled out an egg, grabbed some fresh lettuce, cucumber, and scallion greens from my garden, washed them with spirit spring water, and ate everything dipped in soybean paste. I'm a Northeast girl at heart. I love raw vegetables with dipping sauce. My southern coworkers in my past life were always shocked to see me eating raw vegetables like that. Everything grown with spirit spring water tasted noticeably better than normal produce. After eating, I tidied up my shelves. When I got bored waiting, I cut a watermelon in half and ate it with a spoon, my favorite way to relax in my past life, usually while watching dating shows. Before I finished the watermelon, I heard a sharp cry and the frantic beating of wings. I looked and saw a wild chicken struggling near one of my traps. The rope noose had caught its neck, and the more it fought, the tighter it pulled. It tried to fly, but the rope was tied to a tree, yanking it back down each time. Before it choked to death, I stepped out of my space. Standing nearby without touching it, I tried using my mind to pull the chicken into my space. First attempt failed. I tried again. After several tries, the chicken vanished from the spot. I checked my space through my consciousness. Sure enough, it was in there. I went inside, removed the noose, and the chicken immediately flew off, panicking in this strange new world. It kept trying to fly higher and farther to escape. So far, the chicken seemed perfectly alive inside the space. I let it fly around. I wanted to see how long it could survive in here. That afternoon, I went deeper into the mountains and found several burrow openings near patches of dry grass. I placed rabbit traps at each one, baited with diced apple and carrot. I'd read in my past life that rabbits actually love apples. The sweet taste attracts them, though the high sugar content causes diarrhea in pet rabbits. But since my plan was to catch and eat them, rabbit digestion wasn't my concern. After setting the traps, I went back to my space. Books said rabbits are most active at dawn and dusk, so I ate fruit and waited. As dusk fell, I heard movement outside. I rushed out and found a rabbit caught in one of my traps. I pulled the entire cage with the rabbit inside into my space. This time it only took 2 tries. I opened the door, and the rabbit bolted off into the distance. The wild chicken was still alive and flying around whenever it saw me. Good. Animals could survive in here. I went back out.
It was dark now.
I hurried to check the other traps and found 2 more rabbits. I stored everything, rabbits, cages, all of it, into my space, then headed to check my chicken snares. I got lucky. Another wild chicken was caught. Unfortunately, this one had struggled too long, and the rope had strangled it. I put the dead bird in my space and prepared to head down the mountain. In this era, you need travel papers to go anywhere. The military was strict about curfew. Everyone had to be back by 10 at night. Staying out overnight required advance approval. With so many people watching me and Shun Mingzheng, if I didn't come home and someone reported it, they could accuse me of trying to steal military secrets. That would be a disaster. I planned to retrace my route. If I walked fast and drank spirit spring water whenever I got tired, I could make it back in about 3 hours. It was maybe a little past 6 now, so I'd arrive before 10. The math worked. But plans don't always survive reality. Whether I was walking too fast to pay attention to direction, or it was simply too dark to see, I got lost. All the trees around here were tall, except one short one. I clearly remembered passing it before. I placed an apple on it as a marker and kept walking. A while later, I saw the apple again. I'd walked in a circle. I refused to believe it. I set off in a different direction. Soon enough, there was the short tree with the apple. This was ridiculous. In my past life, my sense of direction was excellent. I never got lost at any tourist site. But this wild mountain in near total darkness was a different story. Either the terrain was too confusing or the original body's navigation skills were terrible. Either way, I had absolutely no idea which way led home. I tried one more time, deliberately avoiding the marked tree and walking much farther. This time I didn't see the apple again, but I had no confidence this was the right path either. If I was heading the wrong direction, I could walk until sunrise and still not get back. I stopped and tried to study my surroundings carefully, looking for any clue about which way to go. That's when I stepped on something. A searing, stabbing pain shot through my ankle. In the faint moonlight, I saw what had clamped onto my foot, an iron animal trap. One corner was tied to a tree with rope. I pulled scissors from my space, cut the rope, and ducked inside. The space matched the outside time, so it was dark in here too. But at least I could safely make fire. I grabbed a ceramic basin from my shelf, stuffed it with dry leaves, and lit them. The flames illuminated everything. The trap had clamped right onto my heel and ankle. The skin there was delicate, already torn open and bleeding heavily. I'd seen these traps on online shopping sites in my past life, but never imagined I'd actually step in one. I tried to pry it open.
Couldn't.
Even using every ounce of strength I had, the jaws wouldn't budge. The metal was biting into my flesh, and I was drenched in cold sweat. The trap was covered in rust. I wondered if the military hospital here even had tetanus shots. If they didn't, then I looked toward the spirit spring. If its water was as magical as everything else in this space, maybe it could help prevent infection. Worth trying. But the spring was far away, and walking there with this trap on my foot would be agony. If only the water could come to me. The moment I thought that, a small stream of spirit spring water flew through the air and landed right where I wanted it. I could control things inside the space with my mind. I directed the water onto my ankle. Instantly, a cool, soothing sensation washed over the wound. The pain decreased noticeably. I tested my new ability on the wild chicken sleeping nearby. Using my mind, I lifted it into the air. The startled bird woke up and flapped frantically, but couldn't escape my mental grip. I set it down quickly, and it flew away in a panic. Interesting, but I had more pressing problems. I needed this trap off my foot. I searched every shelf in my space. Nothing that could pry it open. If this thing stayed on too long, the lack of blood flow would kill the tissue. My foot could be permanently damaged. Since I couldn't remove it myself, I needed to get back to the family quarters fast. But there was the other problem. I was completely lost. If I picked the wrong direction, I'd only get farther from home. I chose a direction and started walking. I cut up a piece of clothing from my space into strips and tied one to a tree every so often, partly to avoid walking in circles again, partly as a rescue signal in case anyone came looking. Every step was excruciating. I could only touch the ground lightly with my toes. Even with Spirit Spring water splashed on the wound regularly, cold sweat kept pouring down my face. Meanwhile, Shen Mingzheng had spent the whole day leading the hunting team in the mountains. They'd caught a good amount of game. He escorted the hull back to base and was about to head out again for nighttime hunting. Some animals like wild boar and field mice come out after dark. Passing our house on his way, he noticed no lights were on. That was odd. I was always home at this hour, either drawing or planning my next batch of winter supplies. Our house was the only one in the family quarters that used the electric light at night. Everyone else used kerosene lamps to save electricity. He went inside. Nobody in the bedroom. Nobody in the kitchen. Not even in Xiaojuan's room. He checked the toilet, the backyard, even the cellar. Empty. Something like panic crept over him. He went straight to Sun Dagong's house. Sun Dagong assumed there was a hunting emergency and started putting on his coat. But Shen Mingzheng said, "I'm not here for you. I need to talk to Sister Sunday." He asked Sun Gili if she knew where I was. She shook her head nervously. "She's not home? I went to your place this afternoon, and she wasn't there either." His first thought was that I'd run away. He wouldn't agree to divorce, so I just left. Anger and a bone-deep chill hit him at the same time, like ice water poured over him inside and out. Sun Gili saw his expression and panicked. "Did you check everywhere? Maybe she's doing yard work." He shook his head and turned to leave. He was going to the political department to check if I'd been issued travel papers. Sun Gili called after him. "Commander Shen, are her belongings still there?" He froze. She was right. If I'd actually left, I would have taken important things with me. He rushed home and threw open the cabinets. Everything was there. The drawers, too. He found the hidden compartment, household registration book, bank book, cash. All still there. He exhaled with relief. If I'd truly left, I might skip the money, but I definitely need the household registration. So I hadn't run away. Sun Dagong suggested checking if I'd gone visiting neighbors. Sun Gili immediately shook her head. "Yi doesn't visit people, especially not at this hour." Then she slapped her thigh. "She wouldn't have gone to the mountain, would she?" Shen Mingzheng's had snapped toward her, eyes sharp and questioning. She stammered. "I told her about the winter hunting season." She seemed really interested. "She wouldn't have gone alone, would she?" Sun Dagong glared at his wife. "Why would you tell her about that? Don't you know how dangerous those mountains are? Even we men go in groups." Sun Gili's face went white. "I never imagined she'd actually go by herself." Before she finished, Shen Mingzheng was already out the door. He went to the storage shed and checked. The shovel was gone. The sickle was gone. He nearly choked on his own fury. That woman, did she actually think she could hunt with a shovel and a sickle? While I was lost and injured in the mountains, Shen Mingzheng was organizing a search. He told Sun Gili to wait at her house in case I came back. He asked Sun Dagong to gather volunteers to search the mountain in groups. He was careful to say this was a personal request, not an order, entirely voluntary. He told them safety came first, don't go too deep, and stay in contact. It was the first time he'd ever asked his brothers for help with a private matter. Sun Dagong saluted and ran off to gather their trusted people. In the regiment, there were two factions, Zhao Youfu's and Shen Mingzheng's. Shen Mingzheng never wanted a faction. He was forced into it because Zhao Youfu constantly tried to override him, even pushing training plans that endangered soldiers' lives. Shen Mingzheng rejected those plans. He was practical and put his men's safety first, which earned him genuine loyalty. Sun Dagong was one of his most devoted followers. Shen Mingzheng went up the mountain alone. He knew which directions the nearby communes had chosen for their hunting, so he could narrow down where I might have gone. He took the trail that family quarters residents normally used and examined the ground with his flashlight. Among the mess of footprints, he found mine. My city-bought shoes had deeper treads and different patterns from the homemade shoes everyone else wore. He followed my trail into the mountains. The deeper he went, the fewer other tracks there were, but mine kept going. That alarmed him. I'd gone far deeper than even soldiers would go without a group. Every so often he heard military whistles echoing through the mountains, Sun Dagong's team signaling that they hadn't found me yet. He reached the spot where I'd set my wild chicken traps. Examining the ground, he could tell I'd actually caught something. Then my trail split in two directions. He chose the deeper path and found the area where I'd placed rabbit traps. On the ground were leftover carrot pieces and apple chunks. Apples? Where would I get fresh apples out here?
He was certain it was me, though.
Anyone else from the family quarters would have collected the leftover bait to reuse. Only I would leave it behind. From the tracks around the burrows, he could tell I'd caught rabbits too. He frowned. I was a pampered city girl. How did I know how to do any of this? Too many questions, no answers. He circled back and realized he'd taken a detour. My actual route went the other direction. He picked up speed, then noticed something strange. One area had far too many overlapping footprints. I'd clearly walked through the same spot multiple times. He looked around. This section was full of scholar trees with unusually dense, cloud-shaped canopies, the kind of formation that easily confused people's sense of direction. But I wasn't here anymore, so I'd eventually found my way out. Then he spotted a tree with especially heavy foot traffic around its base. He walked over and found an apple sitting on a branch. This was a scholar tree. A short one, but still a scholar tree. Scholar trees don't grow apples. There were no apple trees anywhere nearby either. The apple was big, red, perfectly round and smooth, with no bug bites or animal teeth marks. It hadn't been here long. Fruit this fragrant would attract animals quickly. He pocketed the apple, filed away his questions, and kept searching for my tracks. Soon after, he found a different path leading away from the apple tree. He followed my footprints for only a short distance before he stopped dead. Near one of my footprints, he saw blood. His heart clenched. He crouched down to examine the area. The ground showed signs of a trap having been placed here. He scooped up some of the bloodied soil and smelled it. A faint salty, metallic scent. Human blood. After years of hunting in these mountains, he knew the difference. While chicken blood smells sharp, sheep blood has a gamey tang. Boar blood stinks. This was human. Being injured in the mountains at night was extremely dangerous. Animals could smell blood from far away. Large predators would be drawn to it. The worry in his eyes was so thick it was almost solid. He followed the blood trail, moving faster. Along the way, he noticed cloth strips tied to trees at regular intervals. He recognized the fabric immediately. It was from one of my shirts. The strips guided him forward, and he ran. Then he found me, about 100 meters ahead, standing with my back to him. But what nearly stopped his heart was what I was facing. 30 meters in front of me stood a tiger. A full-grown, massive adult tiger. The tiger had been drawn by the smell of my blood. When I first spotted it, we were about 30 meters apart. It had been nearby and approached quietly, which is why I didn't notice it sooner. We locked eyes. It started walking toward me. Massive, about 2 meters long, with huge, heavy paws. I could have ducked into my space immediately, but honestly, I was thrilled. In my past life, I'd only ever seen tigers in zoos, lazy, domesticated creatures with no wildness left. This one radiated the full power of a true forest king. I wanted to see it up close. I even had the wild thought of pulling it into my space, so I could watch it anytime without buying a ticket. I killed that idea instantly. Imagine going into my space every day wondering if a tiger was about to eat me. And if it did, I'd never be able to face Director Zhang and everyone else in the underworld. They'd laugh at me for eternity. It was too dark for anyone to see the excitement in my eyes. From a distance, I probably looked frozen with terror. The tiger stopped about 10 meters away. We stared at each other in a standoff. Then it suddenly turned its head and looked behind me. I glanced that direction and quickly looked back. I wasn't about to take my eyes off this thing for long. Roar. The tiger let out a warning growl that made my ears ring. It was telling everything in the area, "This food is mine." Then it turned back to me. Its upper body lowered, and its hind legs dug into the ground. I knew what that meant. It was about to pounce. I held my breath, ready to dive into my space. But before I could, I heard something cutting through the air. Both the tiger and I looked. A thick tree branch was flying straight at the tiger's head. The tiger reacted instantly. It leaped up and caught the branch in its jaws. While the tiger was airborne, Shen Mingjing emerged from behind a tree and sprinted to a position near the tiger, then stopped. He was holding a Type 53 rifle with a bayonet, pointed directly at the animal. He hadn't fired because the tiger and I were on the same line. If he shot and the tiger dodged, which it absolutely could at that speed, the bullet could hit me. The odds were small, but he wouldn't gamble with my life. I stared at him, stunned. A complicated wave of emotions crashed through me. "What are you doing here?" I blurted out. My real concern was practical. With him here, I couldn't disappear into my space. He didn't answer my question. Instead, his voice came out soft and steady. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." For words, they hit me like a bolt of lightning straight to the chest. My heart erupted into waves I couldn't control. I stared at him, completely forgetting about the massive predator standing between us. He thought I'd frozen with fear. He wanted to come to me, but the tiger was blocking his path. The tiger had locked onto Shen Mingjing now. His branch-throwing stunt was a challenge, and the animal wasn't backing down. It wanted me as its meal, and anyone who tried to interfere would die. Shen Mingjing stood his ground, matching the tiger's gaze. His full battle aura radiated outward, and incredibly, his presence felt almost as overwhelming as the tiger's. I watched in amazement. I'd had no idea he carried this much raw power. What I didn't know was that Shen Mingjing had survived countless battles. His commanding presence was forged from crawling out of piles of dead bodies. Even this full-grown tiger sensed the threat. But the tiger didn't retreat. It wanted its food, and nobody was taking it. "Can that gun kill it?" I asked nervously. He ignored my question. "When I draw it away, run in the 3 o'clock direction. Don't look back. My foot is hurt." "I can't run far." His heart sank, but he didn't look at me. He kept his eyes locked on the tiger. In a standoff like this, showing even a flicker of weakness or dropping his guard for a second would trigger an attack. "Then hide as best you can." I nodded, then realized he wasn't looking.
Okay.
"Be careful," but I had no intention of actually hiding. This tiger was enormous and lightning fast. If Shen Mingjing couldn't handle it, I'd have to step in. He came to save me. I couldn't just watch him get killed. If things went bad, I'd try to pull either the tiger or him into my space. But that only worked at close range, so I needed to stay nearby. The tiger's patience ran out. It lunged, massive paws aimed at Shen Mingjing's body, trying to slam him to the ground.
He was ready.
He dodged sideways and thrust the bayonet at the tiger's neck. But tigers are legendary for their agility. Sensing the blade, it twisted away at the last instant. His attack only enraged it further. Its savage nature fully erupted. The second charge came faster. Shen Mingjing dodged again, striking with the bayonet. But this time the tiger saw the weapon coming. It changed the direction of its paw mid-swipe and slapped the blade directly. With a sharp crack, the bayonet, made of alloy steel, bent under a single blow. If that paw had landed on a human body instead of steel, it would have crushed every bone. The impact traveled up the rifle into Shen Mingjing's hands. His grip nearly failed. The space between his thumb and forefinger went numb. I watched from the sidelines, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The tiger's attacks kept coming, each one faster than the last. Shen Mingjing had no time to breathe. He dodged while studying the tiger's attack patterns, looking for the perfect moment to shoot. His Type 53 rifle was single-shot with only 5 bullets. He needed to make every round count. At this distance, with both him and the tiger moving constantly, accuracy would suffer. And if he missed, the tiger wouldn't give him a second chance. After a dozen failed charges, the tiger suddenly paused. Shen Mingjing seized the opening and pulled the trigger. The blast made the tiger flinch sideways. The bullet grazed the upper part of its neck, a through-and-through wound. Painful, but not fatal. And now it was truly enraged. It charged at Shen Mingjing with terrifying speed, jaws aimed at his throat. Even with his experience, he was struggling. Yet in the middle of fighting for his life, he still yelled at me, "Hide." Now, my heart twisted. He was the one in danger, and he was worried about me. The tiger's attacks grew more vicious. Its claws were like iron hooks, gouging deep scratches into the trees around them. Shen Mingjing had already burned through so much energy searching for me. He was running out of steam against this impossibly agile predator. He tried to lure the tiger further away from me, but I didn't hide. I followed behind the tiger instead. If things got desperate, I'd pull the tiger into my space. It would be bizarre for a tiger to vanish into thin air, but as long as I denied everything, Shen Mingjing couldn't prove anything. That was still better than pulling him into the space and exposing my secret entirely. Maybe I got too close, or maybe the wounded tiger was extra sensitive. It whipped its head around and locked eyes with me. Its gaze burned like two flames, pure ferocity and killing intent. Shen Mingjing saw it turn and sprinted toward me with everything he had. The tiger lunged at me. Shen Mingjing reached me just in time to shove me out of the way. But he couldn't dodge himself. The tiger's claws raked across his back, tearing deep gashes. Blood poured out instantly. He stumbled forward. "Shen Mingjing," I stared at him, eyes wide, completely in shock. I could have escaped into my space. But when I saw him throw himself between me and the tiger, my body stopped responding. He'd risked his life without a second thought for me. Another fraction of a second, and those claws would have hit his skull. My eyes burned. In neither my past life nor this one had anyone ever done something like this for me. He glanced back to confirm I was okay, then immediately turned to face the tiger again. He'd been struggling before the injury. Now, bleeding heavily, he was fading fast. Within a few exchanges, the tiger swatted his rifle away. It went spinning across the ground. Shen Mingjing drew his military knife, his last weapon. I looked at the rifle on the ground, then at him, locked in close combat with the tiger, blood streaming down his back. I picked up the gun. In my past life, shooting ranges were one of my stress relief activities. My accuracy was actually quite good. The guns there were less powerful than real firearms, but the mechanics and principles were nearly identical. I studied the rifle for a few seconds, figured out how it worked, and aimed at the tiger. I also mentally prepared a backup plan. If I missed, I'd pull the tiger into my space. The tiger launched itself at Shen Mingjing in a flying leap. He braced himself for a final stand, raising the knife toward the tiger's jaw. His back wound was bleeding badly, slowing him down. He knew dragging this out meant death. Just as he was about to meet the tiger head-on, I screamed, "Shen Mingjing, get down!" His first instinct said no. Dropping flat against a charging tiger meant exposing his spine. The animal would snap it in an instant. But then my words from that night echoed through his mind. The marriage she wanted was one where they'd entrust their backs to each other, where even if she held a knife to his heart, he'd stand still and trust that she would never hurt him. The thought took less than a second. He dropped, flat on the ground. Complete surrender. A gunshot cracked through the forest. Then the heavy thud of something massive hitting the earth. He looked up. The tiger lay on the ground, struggling to stand. It made it halfway up before crashing down again. A bloody hole gaped in its skull, still losing. He stared in disbelief. Then slowly, stiffly, he turned to look at me. I was standing there, holding the rifle, eyes just as wide as his. Inside my head, I was screaming. I was aiming for its heart. How did I hit its head? His gaze was a mixture of shock and deep suspicion. How was I supposed to explain that this perfect headshot on a leaping tiger was pure dumb luck? Would he believe that? If I were him, I absolutely would not. He recovered before I did. He walked over to the tiger and checked. Its legs were twitching, but it was barely breathing. Almost dead. I could see the storm raging inside him. Even he, an expert marksman, had missed his shot when the tiger was moving. And yet I, a sheltered city girl, a university professor who'd never touched a weapon, had just put a bullet through a charging tiger's skull. Before our marriage, the military had investigated my background. I was a capitalist's daughter who went to work, taught classes, read books, and went home. No connection to firearms whatsoever. But the way I'd picked up that rifle, the ease with which I'd aimed and fired, it was obvious I didn't just know how to shoot. I was good at it. Once Shen Mingzheng confirmed the tiger was dying and the danger had passed, he blew his military whistle. Faint responses came from the distance, his search team acknowledging the signal. He walked over to me, looked me up and down, and when he saw only my ankle was hurt, relief washed over his face. He immediately knelt down. My ankle was swollen to the size of a steamed bun, bloody and raw with the trap still clamped on. His expression tightened with pain, not his own but for me. He lifted me onto a nearby rock, then crouched in front of my foot. Examining the trap type, he asked without looking up, "You can shoot?" I knew that question was coming. I smiled awkwardly. "If I told you that shot was pure luck, would you believe me?" I watched his face carefully, trying to gauge how suspicious he was. I was so focused on reading his expression that I didn't notice what his hands were doing. While I was distracted, he wrenched the trap open. The metal teeth ripping free from my flesh sent a wave of agony through my entire body that made me scream. The wound, which had stopped bleeding, started gushing again. He poured water from his military canteen over the wound, then grabbed the cloth strips I'd tied around my waist and wrapped them tightly around my ankle. I thrashed from the pain, but his hands gripped my foot firmly, holding it still. The pain was so intense I grabbed his shoulders and squeezed with everything I had. He didn't even flinch. He just kept bandaging. My face had gone completely white. When he looked up at me, his expression was dark and serious. I tried talking to distract myself from the pain. "Why did you come looking for me? Should I have waited for the tiger to eat you? Why did you come to the mountain alone? Do you have any idea how dangerous it is?" His tone was sharp and mocking. That broke something in me. I'd been holding back tears from the pain, but now I just let them fall. Today had been too much. Getting lost, stepping in a trap, facing a tiger. If Shen Mingzheng hadn't come, I would have handled everything on my own. I would have been strong. But the moment he appeared, the moment he threw himself between me and those claws, the wire holding me together snapped. I threw my arms around him and buried my face in his neck. "You promised you wouldn't be mean to me anymore." He froze completely. He had no idea how to react. I kept holding him and let everything pour out. I walked so far today. My legs are exhausted. I got lost and almost couldn't find my way back. Then my foot got caught in that trap, and it hurt so much. And that tiger was following me silently. If I'd noticed it even a second later, it would have killed me. "You don't comfort me, fine. But then you yell at me on top of it? Shen Mingzheng, you jerk. But I forgive you. Because when that tiger came at me, you didn't hesitate. You threw yourself in front of it." I was shocked. And terrified. Terrified you'd get hurt. Terrified you'd die. Shen Mingzheng, when you dropped to the ground at my command. I was so happy. I said all of that and got nothing back. No response. No reaction. Maybe he'd only saved me because he was a soldier. Protecting civilians was his duty. Maybe it had nothing to do with feelings for me. That thought made my heart go cold. I started to pull away from him, but the moment my arms loosened, his wrapped around me.
Tight.
So tight I could barely breathe. "Never go into the mountains alone again. Never leave the house without telling me. Never go anywhere dangerous." His words were commands, but his voice had something fragile in it. Fear, softness, nothing like his usual harshness. And never. Before he could finish that sentence, I leaned forward and pressed my lips against his. He went rigid. His entire body turned to stone. I held a kiss for a few seconds, then pulled back. He stared at me, completely blank, mouth still half open with his unfinished sentence. I smiled. The best way to stop a man from talking is to kiss him. Then I got serious. "Let me see your back." He shook his head. "It's nothing. Just a scratch. There's too much blood smell here. It'll attract other animals. Let me take you somewhere safer." Before he could pick me up, I stopped him. "Wait." Using my mind, I quickly pulled the dead wild chicken and 2 rabbits out of my space and set them down at the farthest distance I could manage without being obvious. I also grabbed a canteen full of spirit spring water and a few eggs. I needed to bring these back to the family quarters. We were both injured and needed good food to recover. I caught wild chickens and rabbits earlier. They're over there, along with water and eggs. We can eat the eggs to get some energy back. I pointed him in the right direction. It was only about 30 or 40 meters away. When he came back carrying everything, his gaze on me deepened even further. "You know how to hunt too?" I answered without flinching. "I read about it in books. Today was just putting theory into practice." He looked at the brand new bamboo rabbit trap. "And you learned to weave this from a book too?" I'd seen finished ones before. Remembered roughly what they looked like. Tried a few times, and it actually worked. Not that hard, really. I knew what he was suspicious about. But as long as I covered my tracks, he had no proof. And there was no way he'd guess the truth, that I wasn't the original Dingy. In an era that actively fought against superstition, soul transmigration was even more unbelievable than ghosts and spirits. He looked down at a piece of uneaten carrot inside the rabbit trap, then suddenly reached into his coat and pulled something out. "You must be hungry. Have an apple first." I looked at the big, red, perfectly round apple in his hand. My smugness evaporated instantly. That apple looked very familiar. I suddenly remembered. When I was lost, I'd placed an apple on that short tree as a marker. Was this the same one? Was Shen Mingjing testing me? I put on my most innocent face. "Where did you get an apple?" "Wow, it's so sweet. It must have been expensive. Can you buy more next time?" He stared at me, searching for any sign of guilt.
He found nothing.
I've always had an excellent poker face.
What?
"Is there something on my face?" I asked, blinking. After a few seconds, he shook his head and looked away. I held the apple up to his lips. "Try some. It's really delicious." He stared at the bite mark, where my mouth had just been, and immediately his mind went to the kiss. His face started turning red. Even in the dim moonlight, I could tell. "You eat it." "I'm not hungry," he said quickly, then picked up all the supplies, scooped me into his arms, and carried me to a safer spot about 10 minutes away. He set me down on a fallen tree trunk, then looked me in the eyes. "Dingy, that trust you talked about. I did it today." My brain went on high alert. Was he about to ask me to show trust back by revealing my secrets? Absolutely not. My space and painting ability were my lifeline. Nobody could know. I changed the subject. "How did you find me?" "I was a scout." "Your shoe prints are different from everyone else's in the family quarters." I made a mental note. This man had terrifyingly sharp observation skills. I'd need to be even more careful going forward. I glanced at the military canteen hanging from his belt, the one I'd secretly filled with spirit spring water. I knew the water could ease pain, maybe even help healing. But if I used it on him, his keen senses might notice something unusual. How would I explain it? While I was debating, he spoke again. "Dingy, I'm going to try to trust you. Like I did today." I didn't know how to respond. I felt like my big speech about trust the other night had dug me a hole. "So don't mention divorce again." I blinked. "That's what you wanted to say?" "Yes." I exhaled with relief and agreed immediately. Okay. What he'd done today had shaken me deeply. I couldn't deny it anymore. This man had pushed his way into my heart and was putting down roots. But I needed to set something straight. "Shen Mingjung, right now, in this moment, I like you. Everything I'm saying is from the heart. But nobody knows what the future holds. I have one request. If someday you want to leave, tell me directly. Don't stab me in the back." My voice turned cold. Betrayal is the one thing I will never accept. "If you ever do that to me, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life." He was surprised by the intensity, but after everything that had happened tonight, nothing could shock him for long. He thought about my words, then asked something unexpected. "Dingy, do you love your country?" I didn't understand why he'd bring up something so grand right now, but I nodded. "Defending our homeland is my faith," he said, his eyes completely serious. "I love this land. As long as you never conflict with that faith, I will never betray you." I understood what he meant. If I ever did anything to harm the country, He'd turn against me without hesitation. And with all my strange behaviors and abilities, he had reason to be cautious. I couldn't share my secrets, but I could give him this. You have my word. I love this country and this land just as much as you do. I will never do anything that harms our nation or our people. Then he said something that stopped me cold. Comrade Dingy, as long as you keep that promise, from this day forward, I will hold you as important as my faith. When he'd realized I might be in danger, he panicked. When he saw the tiger about to kill me, he wanted to take every blow in my place. When I told him to drop, he chose to trust me, even though it could have cost him his life. He knew his feelings for me had become something different, something deeper. He was saying he'd protect me the way he protected his beliefs, with his life. Shen Mingzheng, you like me, right? He nodded without hesitation. Do you like the current me or the old me? He looked confused. To him, I was just me. Why would there be a difference? Just answer this. Did your feelings start before I came to the base or after? He thought about it honestly. After. That answer made me very happy. If he'd said before, then he was in love with the original Ding Yi, and I was just borrowing her face. But he fell for who I am now. The real me. Since he'd been so honest, I stopped overthinking. I grabbed the canteen from his belt. Turn around and crouch down. Let me clean your wounds. It's fine. I'll deal with it when we get back. He didn't want me to see how bad his back looked. He'd been facing me this whole time on purpose, hiding those gashes.
No.
Waiting too long risks infection. I'll clean it now, and then we go. Hurry up. If anything happens to you, the whole regiment falls apart. He gave in and turned around. 2 deep claw marks ran across his back, so deep I could see bone. My heart clenched. I gently poured spirit spring water over the wounds. The burning pain vanished almost instantly. He noticed immediately. This water stops pain. I made up a quick excuse. It's herbal water. I brewed some anti-inflammatory herbs before coming up here, just in case. Not sure if it actually works. It works very well. Better than painkillers. This time, he didn't ask how I knew so much about herbal medicine. As long as I didn't do anything that threatened the country or its people, he wouldn't pry into my secrets. After Shen Mingzheng cleaned my wound and sat down beside me, I asked the practical question. How are we getting back? We're both hurt, and it's a long way. He tapped his whistle. I already signaled Sun Dagong. They'll find us soon. Then a thought hit me. Shen Mingzheng, is it illegal to eat tiger meat? I vaguely remembered that during a certain period in this era, hunting tigers was actually encouraged, considered a public service. I just couldn't remember the exact time frame. He shook his head. Not illegal. Then can we bring the tiger back? That's a huge animal. Enough meat to last us all winter. How exactly? I carry you, and you carry the tiger. His dry humor didn't faze me one bit. The guys coming to get us, can't they carry it down? They will. But since it was killed with military ammunition, it belongs to the regiment. If you want to try some, I'll bring you a portion when the cafeteria cooks it. Military rules. Any animal killed with army bullets was army property. Individual hunters weren't allowed to use firearms. Really? Get me extra then. Cafeteria cooking wasn't great, but this was tiger meat. How many people could say they'd eaten tiger? That's a lifetime bragging right. He knew I loved meat. But thinking about today's stunt, he added firmly, if you want meat, I'll hunt for you in a few days. But you are never going into the mountains alone again. I looked at my ankle, swollen like a steamed bun. Fine. With my foot like this, I wouldn't be walking anywhere for days. My hunting season was over. He glanced at the dead chicken and rabbits by his feet. You like wild chicken and rabbit? I love all meat. But those were all I could catch, and only a few. What if I go in a few days and bring back a wild boar? My eyes went wide. You can do that. He paused. Something about my tone seemed off to him, but he couldn't pinpoint what. I'll take Sun Dagong and a few others. We'll get 1 or 2 decent-sized boars and split the meat between our families. Do you like fish and shrimp? Love them, I sighed. But Sister Sun said they won't be available until close to New Year's. There was no ocean or river nearby. Fresh fish and shrimp only arrived after the ground froze solid enough for long-distance transport, and even then the quantities were small. The department store workers always skimmed the best for officials and wealthy families. He didn't want to see me disappointed. Over the other side of this mountain, there's a stream running between two peaks. It has fish and shrimp. I'll try my luck there in a few days. I was learning that Shin Mingjung was a man of few words, but every word counted. He seemed quiet and wooden, but he was actually very good at making me feel cared for. I couldn't help myself. I turned my head slightly and pressed my lips softly against his neck. His breathing instantly got heavier. His entire back went rigid. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Don't move around. You'll fall." I sat back properly. This man was so innocent. One little kiss, and he turned to stone. If the two of us ever actually... The thought made my face flush. Even my voice went softer. "Shan Mingjing, I do love meat, but skipping a few meals won't kill me. You're injured too. Forget hunting this season. Focus on healing, that's what matters most." Being cared about like that visibly warmed him. I'd walked for hours, gotten hurt, lost blood, and faced a tiger. I was completely drained. I let my head rest gently on his shoulder and closed my eyes. He went stiff for a moment, then carefully placed one hand behind my lower back to keep me from falling off the log if I fell asleep. Sun Dagong's team arrived soon after. They were soldiers, fit and fast, and they had a clear direction from the whistle signals. When they saw Shin Mingjung carrying me in his arms, they assumed I was seriously hurt. "Commander, how's sister-in-law?" Sun Dagong called out. Shin Mingjung lowered his voice. "Her ankle's injured. I'm carrying her down. There's a tiger at 8 o'clock. Go bring it down the mountain." His voice was much quieter than usual. Sun Dagong realized I wasn't in critical condition. I was asleep. The shock on his face was priceless. Their iron-fisted, battle-hardened commander was being gentle? Every soldier there stared in disbelief. Shin Mingjung frowned slightly. "Did you not hear me?" Even whispered. His authority was unmistakable. "Yes, sir, we'll." Sun Dagong started to shout back, caught Shin Mingjung's warning look, and dropped to a whisper. "We're on it." When they found the tiger, they were stunned by its size. Tigers were rarely caught during winter hunts. They were too fast unless they came to you. This was the biggest one they'd seen in years. Four men loaded it onto a field stretcher and started hauling it down the mountain. Shin Mingjung walked ahead, carrying me. That's when they saw his back. 2 deep, bloody gashes from the tiger's claws. Sun Dagong rushed forward. "Commander, you're hurt. Let me carry sister-in-law." "No need." His wife being carried by another man? Not happening. Sun Dagong scratched his head. "I meant, me and Zhao Laosen could put her on the stretcher and carry her down." No, he knew I'd wake up immediately on the bumpy mountain paths. I was exhausted. He wanted me to sleep. The men chatted during the descent, marveling at the tiger. Someone said the new recruits would go crazy when they saw it. Another praised the commander's marksmanship, that perfect shot right through the tiger's skull. Of course, commander's the best shot in the regiment. You couldn't even carry his shoes. "Zhao Laosen, you're one to talk. Your aim's worse than mine." They laughed and joked their way down the mountain. Shin Mingjung glanced at me sleeping in his arms. His emotions were complicated, but he said nothing to correct them. Let them believe he killed the tiger. If anyone found out I knew how to handle a rifle, it would raise dangerous questions that nobody needed to be asking. I woke up from the pain. A young woman in a military uniform and white coat was pressing on my ankle. She pulled back her hand. "Commander Shin, your wife's ankle bone isn't damaged. Just bandage it and let her rest at home for a while." "That's it?" I spoke up. "Doctor, my ankle was caught in a rusty iron trap. I need a tetanus shot." She looked surprised that I even knew what tetanus was. "We don't have that vaccine here. Only the big hospitals in the provincial capital do. Can you get some sent over?" She shook her head. "No need. People get punctured by rusty nails all the time around here. Nobody's had a problem." That made me angry. "Do you even know the symptoms of tetanus? If you don't know the symptoms, how can you be sure those people were fine? You're a doctor. When a patient raises a legitimate medical concern, your job is to address it, not complain that the patient is being dramatic. Is that your idea of medical ethics?" Her face turned bright red. Before she could argue back, an older doctor walked in, Director Su Jinlong. He waved off her attempted complaint and turned to us with a warm smile. Commander Shin, I've heard your wife has quite a sharp tongue. Today confirms it. But she's not unreasonable like people say. She's just someone who fights for what's right. Shen Mingjun glanced down at me. Can be a bit hot-tempered, but she's always reasonable. Director Su looked at me. Young lady, do you know medicine? No, just some basic common sense. He sighed with disappointment. We desperately need skilled medical people out here. Our medics only know basic stitching and bandaging. On the battlefield, saving lives comes first and minor issues get overlooked. I apologize for Xiao Wang's attitude. I softened. He was sincere, and what he described was the reality. Director Su, our country's medical capabilities will keep advancing. And I believe talented doctors will come to places like this, because the soldiers who protect our nation deserve people who will protect them in return. His eyes lit up. Commander Shin, your wife is truly remarkable. No wonder you refused to divorce her no matter what. Shen Mingjun looked proud. I felt a bit embarrassed. Apparently the entire regiment knew about the original Ding Yi's constant divorce demands. That must have been humiliating for him. I changed the subject. Director Su, could you look at Shen Mingjun's injuries too? I'd noticed his wounds still hadn't been treated. He'd carried me all the way down the mountain with those deep gashes on his back. My injuries can wait, he said. Finish with hers first. Director Su gave Shen Mingjun a knowing look and bandaged my ankle first, then moved on to his back. While examining the claw wounds, Director Su sounded puzzled. Commander Shin, did you treat these already? Animal claw wounds almost always get infected, but yours show no infection at all. They've actually healed significantly. There's even new tissue growing. Shen Mingjun instantly thought of the spirit spring water I'd poured on his wounds. He glanced at me briefly, then answered casually. Didn't have time to treat them on the mountain. Must just be my constitution. I've always healed fast. Director Su accepted this. True enough. You've always been remarkably resilient. And your wife seems to share that trait. Her wound is healing just as well. Like they say, birds of a feather flock together. I caught Shen Mingjun's glance. He'd just covered for me. He knew the water was special, but chose not to question it. Neither of us needed to stay in the hospital. After the bandaging, he wanted to carry me home, but I firmly refused. I borrowed a crutch and hobbled back on my own. At home, he went to get washing water while I went straight to the kitchen. I poured a big bowl of spirit spring water and drank it all down. Then I poured another full bowl for him. Without a tetanus shot, drinking extra spirit spring water was my best alternative. Based on what Director Su had said, it clearly helped wounds heal. When Shen Mingjun came in, I handed him the bowl. He was thirsty and drank the whole thing in a few gulps. Then he paused. A warm current spread from his stomach through his entire body. His exhaustion vanished completely. He felt like he could go 10 more rounds with that tiger. He looked at me, opened his mouth, then closed it without saying a word. I appreciated that restraint. After washing up, I got ready for bed. He'd already laid out both sets of bedding, side by side this time. I didn't object. I just crawled in and fell asleep almost instantly. Sun Gili had heated the bed platform for us earlier, so the blankets were warm and cozy. Shen Mingjun came to bed carefully, trying not to disturb me. His back wounds forced him to sleep on his side. He watched me sleeping with my lips slightly puckered like a child, and his heart melted. My scent filled his nose, that familiar fragrance that gave him a feeling of peace, like his lonely heart had finally found a home. He liked this life. He hoped it could stay this simple and quiet forever. But Sun Gili was frugal by habit and hadn't used much firewood for the heating. The first half of the night was warm enough, but by the second half, the platform cooled down. I got cold in my sleep and instinctively searched for warmth. I crawled right into Shen Mingjun's blanket. He woke the instant I lifted his covers. When I wrapped my arms and legs around him like a human heater, his whole body went stiff as a board. Once I found my warm spot, I settled into a comfortable position and fell into deep, satisfied sleep. He didn't dare move a single muscle. The soft, warm body in his arms didn't just fill his embrace, it filled his entire heart. The next morning, Shen Mingjun got up early. He knew I hated the cold, so he fired up the bed platform and made breakfast before leaving. I slept wonderfully in the warm blankets and didn't wake up until almost noon. No sign of Shen Mingzheng, but there was a note on the table. Gone hunting. Food's in the pot. Heat up breakfast and lunch yourself. I'll cook dinner when I get back. I frowned. His wounds were that serious, and he went hunting? Does he not care about his body? Then I noticed something. My foot felt much better. Yesterday, it was swollen like a steamed bun. Today the swelling had gone way down. The wound barely hurt either. Spirit spring water was clearly powerful stuff. And if my foot had improved this much, Shen Mingzheng's back must have healed significantly too. That explained how he could go hunting. After eating, Sun Geely came to check on me. I gave her the short version of what happened on the mountain, then started dealing with the wild chicken. My technique was clearly amateur, so she jumped in to help, scalding it with hot water, plucking every feather including the tiny ones, gutting it, carefully removing the bile, setting aside the heart and liver. The rooster wasn't very fat, maybe 2 or 3 pounds total. I gave Sun Geely a third of the meat. For piddin. Consider it a thank you if you hadn't given Shen Mingzheng the tip about where I might have gone. Who knows when I'd have made it back. She tried to refuse, blaming herself for telling me about the hunting season in the first place. I insisted, promising she could help process any future wild game I brought home. That settled it. The 2 rabbits I decided to keep alive until the weather got cold enough to freeze meat outdoors. Nature's own freezer. Sun Geely agreed, but warned me not to wait too long, since rabbits lose weight in winter. She also mentioned that soon everyone would be making steamed bean buns and sticky rice cakes for winter. As a true Northeastern girl, I loved bean buns. I'd go trade for red beans once my foot healed. That afternoon, a mail carrier delivered 2 large packages. I was confused. My parents had just sent supplies recently. The sender was Ding Dada, the original Ding Yi's older brother. I had to admire the parents' naming sense. In an era when boys were named Build the Nation or Defend the Country and girls were Graceful Orchid or Beautiful Pearl, they named their kids Ding Dada and Ding Yi. Truly unique people. Inside the packages, white rabbit candies, shrimp crackers, biscuits, Cuban sugar, brown sugar, rice sticks, malted milk powder, cotton, fabric. Plus 2 gift boxes, one containing a fountain pen, the other a Shanghai brand wristwatch. Under the gifts was a letter full of tickets, grain, cloth, oil, and even a bicycle ticket. The letter expressed Ding Dada's displeasure about me following Shen Mingzheng to the military base. He'd never approved of the marriage. He thought Shen Mingzheng was an uneducated brute with a stepchild, unworthy of his precious little sister. He even told me that if I was unhappy, I should divorce immediately, and he'd take care of me for life. I was genuinely moved. In my past life, I was an only child. I never knew what it felt like to have a protective older brother. Now I understood. It felt really nice. I organized everything, keeping some snacks out and storing the rest in my space. Sun Geely brought over dried wild mushrooms she'd gathered from the mountain. I accepted gratefully. Wild chicken stewed with mushrooms is an absolute classic combination. The temperature had dropped enough that I switched to cooking in the kitchen instead of the outdoor stove. This way the fire also heated the bed platform. Chicken stew simmered below, rice steamed on a rack above, plus 2 cold side dishes made from dried cucumber and radish strips. Shen Mingzheng came home right at dark. The aroma of dinner greeted him the moment he walked in, and there I was in the kitchen, busy cooking. A warm, domestic scene. I immediately asked about his wounds. He said they hadn't reopened and had healed a lot, no impact on movement. I could tell the spirit spring water was working wonders on both of us. I'd secretly been using it in all of today's cooking to help him recover faster. At dinner, he gave me all the best pieces of chicken and gnawed on the bony parts himself. I happily accepted. We chatted about his hunting day over the meal. The atmosphere between us was cozy and comfortable, and our appetites matched our mood. We ate the entire pot of chicken and mushroom stew clean. Xiaojun had been staying at Zhang Suilian since Shen Mingzheng left for his mission and hadn't come back. I didn't cook his share and didn't ask about him. I'm not a kid person, and my feelings towards Xiaojun weren't great, so I never brought him up. But sometimes, Even when I'm minding my own business, trouble comes looking for me anyway. The next morning, Shen Mingjun got up early. Before leaving for the mountain hunt, the political department chief stopped him about 2 letters that needed his attention.
I didn't know any of this at the time.
I was at home, getting ready to make sauerkraut. The first letter was from my brother Ding Dada, the copy the department had made during their routine security screening. Shen Mingjun read it, and his face darkened. He already knew his brother-in-law didn't like him, but the letter flat out encouraged me to divorce. He decided he'd need to make a better impression on Big Brother someday. He asked the political department chief why he was being bothered with a family member's ordinary letter. The chief nervously pushed a second letter forward. This one was also addressed to me, but when Shen Mingjun saw the sender's name, his entire aura shifted so dramatically that the chief practically tried to shrink into the wall. Shen Mingjun read the letter, then slammed it on the desk. He sat in silence for a long time. The chief offered to confiscate it. Deliver it to her, Shen Mingjun said through gritted teeth, every word heavy with restrained fury. The chief was shocked but saluted and obeyed. Meanwhile, I was about to start my sauerkraut project when the mail carrier showed up with a letter. I couldn't figure out who else would write to me besides my parents and brother. When I saw the sender's name, Yang Ziyong, I actually laughed. The original Ding Yi's ex-boyfriend. My gossipy side kicked in. I tore it open. The very first line read, "My dearest E, I nearly threw up." This man had written 5 entire pages. I immediately compared it to Shen Mingjun's notes, which were always 1 sentence long with 0 unnecessary words. Page 1 was all about how much he missed me and fond memories of our time together. Page 2 explained that he'd broken up with the girl his parents introduced, listing all her flaws and all my virtues. Page 3 begged me to forgive him and get back together, promising to treat me right this time. Page 4 said he'd heard I was at a military base and felt sorry for me, wanting to give me a better life. Page 5 reminded me that I'd supposedly promised to save myself for him, said he believed I'd kept that promise, and that he was waiting for my divorce, so we could get married immediately. I read every word, then shook off the goosebumps. Who did this man think he was, an emperor who just had to snap his fingers for women to come running? Now that the girl his parents picked wasn't good enough, he wanted me back? In his dreams. Only someone with the original Ding Yi's terrible taste would fall for this greasy, trash-talking ex who badmouthed his former girlfriend behind her back. I threw the letter straight into the cooking fire. Garbage like that didn't deserve space in my life. After that, I got back to making sauerkraut. I'd watched my neighbor's grandmother do it in my past life, so I knew the steps. First, I scalded the big clay jar with boiling water for sterilization, then rinsed it again with spirit spring water for extra protection. I blanched the whole cabbages in boiling water for about a minute each, let them cool, then layered them in the jar. 1 layer of cabbage, 1 layer of salt, with a few peppercorns mixed in for extra flavor. I filled the entire jar. The top needed a heavy stone to press everything down, but I couldn't lift one, so that would wait for Shen Mingjun. In about a month, the cabbage would ferment into proper sauerkraut. I remembered how my neighbor's grandmother used to give me the crunchy, tangy cabbage cores as a kid. Absolutely delicious. After the sauerkraut, I went into my space and painted red beans, green beans, soybeans, sunflower seeds, peanuts, sticky yellow rice, and glutinous rice. I planted everything around the spirit spring. In a few days, I'd make sticky bean buns, plus red bean and green bean-filled pancakes. I also planted sesame. Once harvested and roasted into powder, it would make perfect filling for sweet rice balls. Who says you can only eat rice balls during the Lantern Festival? On a freezing winter morning, a steaming bowl of sesame rice balls sounds absolutely heavenly. As for the peanuts and sunflower seeds, those were for roasting. Once the weather got really cold, I planned to stay home every day, bundled up, snacking on roasted seeds, drinking warm drinks, and doing absolutely nothing productive. Just thinking about that life made me smile. Shen Mingjun came home before dark, just as he'd promised. I really appreciated that about him. When he said something, he followed through. Actions over words, every time. We fell into our usual routine. He handled the firewood, washing, and cutting vegetables. I did the cooking. We worked smoothly together. But today he was quieter than usual.
distracted even.
I didn't think much of it at the time. What I didn't know was that his mind was consumed by Yang Ziyong's letter. The political department had shown it to him before delivering it to me. He'd read every word. The walks at sunset, the study sessions together, the gift exchanges, the promises of forever. Every detail made his chest ache in ways he couldn't describe. He was afraid that after reading the letter, I'd want to divorce him again for that man. After dinner, I was about to ask him about today's hunt, but he said he had work to handle at the base and left in a hurry. I didn't find it strange. He was the commander. Of course, he had things to do beyond hunting. He came home very late. I'd left a bowl of spirit spring water on the table with a note telling him to drink it, then washed up and went to sleep. When he came to bed, I was already deep asleep. The moment he lay down, I apparently crawled over and wrapped myself around him again. My body runs cold, both in this life and my past one, and the original Ding Yi's blood loss from the wrist cutting made it worse. In my sleep, I instinctively sought warmth. But instead of being happy about it like the night before, Shen Mingjing's mind was in turmoil. He kept wondering, in my dreams, was I hugging him, or was I imagining Yang Ziyong? I'd supposedly promised that man I'd save myself. Was that why I'd always refused to share a bed? Was that why we still slept under separate blankets? Did my heart still belong entirely to someone else? The next morning, he deliberately didn't get up early. I woke up groggy, started to stretch, then froze. Something was very wrong. I looked down. I was draped over Shen Mingjing like an octopus. Arms, legs, everything wrapped around him. I was under his blanket. Mine was lying abandoned next to us. My face turned bright red. So that's why the last 2 nights had been so warm and comfortable. I'd been climbing into his bed in my sleep, basically taking advantage of him while unconscious. Thank goodness he wasn't awake. I would have died of embarrassment. I slipped back into my own blanket as stealthily as I could. The second I got in, ice cold. Not a trace of warmth. I immediately stopped feeling nostalgic for my own bed and got up to make breakfast. But mentally, I noted that I needed to solve the heating problem. The bed platform stayed warm in the first half of the night, but cooled off completely by the second half. If it was already this bad now, what would happen when temperatures dropped to -20 or 30? What I didn't know was that Shen Mingjing had been awake the entire time, pretending to sleep. When I scrambled back to my own blanket, his eyes opened, cold as ice. To him, this confirmed everything. When I was conscious, I didn't want to be near him. I didn't want intimacy. All because of Yang Ziyong. He left for hunting without eating breakfast. I thought he was just running late and rushed to the kitchen to pack him a stuffed pancake and 2 eggs. But by the time I got outside, he was already gone. Standing at the gate, I spotted Zhang Zuelian and Xiaojun walking toward her house from nearby. Xiaojun's head was down, his clothes dirty. Neither of them noticed me. I overheard their conversation. Xiaojun was crying. Annie Zuelian, why do they always bully me? They're bad kids. Stay away from them. Or come get me and I'll yell at them. But when you yell at them, they're not scared. Can I tell my dad? He's really strong. They'd definitely be afraid of him. Zhang Zuelian immediately shut that down.
No.
If your dad finds out you're getting beaten up, he'll confront their parents. And those brats don't listen to their families anyway. Besides, your dad is so busy and tired. He doesn't have time for small things like this. And if he thinks I'm not taking good care of you, he might make that woman look after you instead. Do you want that? Xiaojun shook his head frantically. I won't tell him. I promise. I'll just stay in our yard from now on so they can't reach me. That's right. Stay home where it's safe. They finally noticed me when they were practically at my doorstep. Zhang Zuelian's face went tense with alarm. Xiaojun dove behind her. I looked at the two of them acting like I was some kind of monster. Honestly, was I that terrifying? I didn't bother engaging. Just turned around and went home. But I disagreed with how Zhang Zuelian was handling this. Teaching Xiaojun to hide and avoid everything would only make him more timid and make his bullies bolder. Worse, she was actively preventing him from telling Shen Mingjing, his father, the one person responsible for his physical and mental well-being. A child living under constant bullying without any real protection was going to develop serious problems. But I wasn't going to interfere. Shen Mingjing trusted Zhang Suilian with Xiao Jun. That was his decision. Getting involved would only make me the meddling stepmother, and good intentions don't always get good results. I had better things to do with my time, like figuring out how to improve our living situation and stockpile more supplies. I'd stockpiled enough winter vegetables and grain, so today I decided to do absolutely nothing productive. I roasted some sunflower seeds, dug out the radio my parents had sent me, and settled into the yard to soak up some autumn sunshine. Most people in this era used simple crystal radios that didn't need power. But my parents sent me a vacuum tube radio that ran on batteries. Much better sound quality, but expensive to operate. They'd included 20 batteries, because the Ding family never worried about costs like that. I made a mental note. I needed to move the family's valuable antiques and heirlooms into my space before the political movement started. If our house got raided, everything would be confiscated. Those items would be worth a fortune in the future, enough to fund my lazy lifestyle for several lifetimes. I switched through channels. News I already knew. Revolutionary songs I didn't care about. Nothing interesting. Then I got an idea. I took the radio apart, removed the telescoping antenna, and rebuilt it into a loop antenna using the metal rod and wiring. Loop antennas are better at picking up shortwave signals from greater distances. I reassembled everything in under 10 minutes. After rotating the antenna to find the strongest signal, I picked up a new channel. Someone was reciting a poem about winter hunting. Fitting, given the season. I listened casually while daydreaming about convincing Shen Mingjing to take me fishing soon. I wanted to catch enough fish and shrimp to keep some alive in my space for whenever I wanted fresh seafood. Then suddenly, I sat bolt upright and stared at the radio. The poem was being repeated over and over. Each line sounded normal on its own. But when I took the first character of each line and strung them together, they spelled Winter Hunt Operation. The last character of each line gave a phrase that sounded like chaos to steal. The second to last character of each line, burn camp on day 3. Put it all together. Winter Hunt Operation. Burn the camp on day 3. Steal during the chaos. I wasn't being paranoid. In my past life, I worked in a classified chip research department. We had constant security training, counter-espionage, anti-leak protocols, how enemies transmitted intelligence through coded messages. I'd seen plenty of spy dramas that depicted exactly this kind of encoded radio communication. Today was October 31st. November 3rd was only 3 days away. I loved this country in both my lives. Enemy agents made my blood boil. I needed to tell Shen Mingjing immediately. But I had no idea where exactly he was hunting. I went to Sun Geely. Sister Sun, I need Shen Mingjing back here urgently. Can you have your husband signal him to return as fast as possible? She could see from my expression this was serious, but warned me that Sun Dagong was a stickler for rules. He wouldn't interrupt the commander's hunting without a legitimate reason. Tell him I collapsed and my condition is unknown. She blinked at me. Clearly, I looked perfectly healthy. Just go, quickly. Make sure he doesn't see through it. If calling Shen Mingjing back causes any disciplinary problems, I'll take full responsibility. You and your husband won't be blamed. She trusted me enough by now to know I wouldn't do this lightly. She ran off. Sun Dagong heard that I'd collapsed and immediately thought of how much Shen Mingjing cared about me. He grabbed his military whistle and blew a coded signal, different rhythms, intervals, and lengths conveying specific messages. Soon, an answering whistle came from the mountains. Commander says he's coming back immediately. Sun Dagong told his wife. Let's go check on her. Sun Geely's heart sank. She'd been hoping he wouldn't insist on coming along. She knew that the moment he saw me standing there perfectly fine, he'd be furious. He might even signal Shen Mingjing to turn back. She tried to stop him. I can handle it alone. You're still on duty. You can't just leave. The commander considers his wife extremely important. If she's in trouble, we help. Let's go. He marched ahead. She jogged behind him, silently panicking about what would happen when he discovered my collapse was a complete lie. Sure enough, when Sun Dagong and Sun Geely arrived at my yard and found me sitting there perfectly healthy, eating sunflower seeds and drinking water, Sun Dagong's face turned to stone. Sun Geely jumped in quickly. Dagong, has a real emergency. That's why she needed the commander back. Please don't ruin things. He wasn't having it. In his eyes, I was just a pretty woman with a bad reputation in the family quarters. What I'd done crossed his line, using a fake emergency to pull the commander away from an important mission. He didn't care that I was the commander's wife. He reached for his whistle to signal Shen Mingjing not to come back. I smiled at him calmly. Brother Sun, I understand your doubts and your frustration, but I have serious business with Shen Mingjing. He absolutely must come back right now, or something terrible will happen. He didn't believe me. What could a woman possibly know about serious matters? Sun Geely snatched the whistle from his hand before he could blow it. He glared at her, but she held firm despite shaking. I told them to sit, have some seeds, and wait. Sun Dagong snorted and refused to touch them. Sun Geely grabbed a handful out of politeness, but was too nervous to eat. I wouldn't tell them what it was about. This involved enemy agents. I trusted nobody with that information except Shen Mingjing. About half an hour later, Shen Mingjing appeared. He'd sprinted through the forest at incredible speed. When he saw the three of us sitting peacefully in the yard eating sunflower seeds, he looked completely confused. Then his expression hardened. He assumed I'd called him back to demand a divorce. You're back. Come inside. I need to talk to you, I said, and walked toward the house. He followed with a dark face, certain this was about Yang Ziyong and divorce. I closed the door, pulled a piece of paper from the drawer, and handed it to him. He blinked. This wasn't a divorce talk, it was a poem. He read it through, bewildered. It clearly wasn't a love poem, so it couldn't be from Yang Ziyong either. I explained. I heard this poem on the radio today. Something felt wrong about it. I took a pen and circled specific characters. The first character of each line spelled out, Winter Hunt Operation. The last characters gave a phrase meaning, steal during chaos. The second to last characters, burn camp on day 3. Combined, Winter Hunt Operation, burn camp on day 3, steal during the chaos. The moment I circled those characters, Shen Mingjing's eyes narrowed. He saw the pattern immediately, but then he frowned. The enemy wouldn't use something this simple to send signals. If even a civilian could spot it, our security division would have caught it already. They haven't reported anything, which means they've likely checked and cleared it. I'd anticipated this. I pointed at the radio I'd brought inside. I had nothing to do today, so I modified the radio a little. That's how I picked up this particular station signal. He looked at the radio. The telescoping antenna was gone. In its place was a handmade loop antenna attached to the back. I could see the gears turning in his head. I'd rebuilt a radio's antenna system to extend its shortwave reception range, then happened to intercept what appeared to be an encoded enemy transmission. For a pampered capitalist princess, this was impossible. His gaze shifted, measuring, analyzing, questioning. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Honestly, I'd be suspicious too. But I didn't look away. Shen Mingjing, I love this country just as much as you do. I would never do anything to harm our nation or our people. Please trust me. My eyes were steady and open. He looked into them for a long moment. I trust you, he said. He folded the paper, tucked it into his pocket, wrapped the modified radio in cloth, and headed for the door. Sun Dagong was waiting outside, surprised to see us emerge so quickly and quietly. He'd expected shouting and punishment. Where was the lecture about wasting military resources? Shen Mingjing walked past him and said simply, "Come with me to brigade headquarters." Sun Dagong was baffled. Brigade headquarters?
Why?
But years of military discipline kicked in before questions could form. He snapped to attention. Yes, Commander, he was a soldier. Following orders was his duty. After Shen Mingjing and Sun Dagong left, Sun Geely finally relaxed. I brought out 2 cups of malted milk powder. One for her, one for me. She was relieved that Shen Mingjing hadn't gotten angry. She told me how terrified she'd been. Sun Dagong had been glaring at her the whole time and whispered he'd settle things when they got home. She tried to refuse the malted milk, saying it was too expensive. I told her I'd made it specially for her, and it would taste bad cold. She gave in, drank it in big gulps, and sighed happily. No wonder rich folks buy this stuff. It really is delicious. Then she opened up about their financial situation. Sun Dagong sent most of his pay back to his large, poor family in the countryside. If he didn't support them, people would starve. That's why he was so careful about his career. Any mistake could cost him everything. She admitted she'd panicked when she snatched his whistle earlier and was fully expecting him to hit her when they got home. I told her sincerely, Sister Sun, you and Brother Sun are hardworking, honest people. Things will get better for you. And I promise he won't hit you tonight, she smiled. I don't know why, but whenever you say something, I just believe it. We sat cracking sunflower seeds together for about an hour and a half before Shen Mingjung and Sun Dagong returned. Sun Dagong looked at me strangely, surprised, almost confused. Shen Mingjung walked up to me and said quietly, your ankle needs a follow-up check. I'll take you to the military hospital. I raised an eyebrow. My foot was nearly healed, and he knew it. This was clearly an excuse. I played along.
Sure.
It has been hurting a bit. Sun Gili felt guilty about keeping me chatting when I should have been resting. I assured her I'd enjoyed every minute. Then Shen Mingjung said something that surprised even me. Sister Sun, please come visit more often. He knew I was a loner by choice. Most people here didn't interest me, but he could see that Sun Gili had genuinely earned my trust, and having her around was good for me. Sun Gili was so flattered she could barely speak. She promised to come by whenever she could. After Sun Gili left, Shen Mingjung and Sun Dagong exchanged a subtle glance. He carried me toward the hospital, while Sun Dagong headed in a different direction, up the mountain. Near the hospital, once nobody was around, Shen Mingjung whispered, we're going to brigade headquarters. They need you to explain some things. I nodded. From my conversations with Sun Gili, I already knew the setup. The brigade and regiment headquarters were on 2 neighboring mountains. Shen Mingjung's regiment was a special operations unit that operated independently most of the time. Only major issues went to the brigade commander. He picked me up and took a shortcut through a small path behind the hospital. My ankle was better for flat walking but not ready for mountain climbing. Soon Sun Dagong appeared from another direction. The 3 of us merged and walked to brigade headquarters in silence. I could tell Sun Dagong finally understood why Shen Mingjung had insisted on coming back personally instead of just sending someone to fetch me. Even carrying me, Shen Mingjung moved fast. We arrived in just over 30 minutes. Brigade Commander Wei Heping looked surprised when Shen Mingjung walked in with a woman in his arms. Shen Mingjung set me down and saluted. Reporting, Commander. This is my wife, Ding Yi. Commander Wei studied me carefully. He clearly hadn't expected the person who'd cracked an enemy code to be such a young woman. But there was no condescension in his eyes. Hello, Comrade Ding Yi. Thank you for discovering the enemy signal. Your alertness brings honor to all military families. However, for security reasons, we need to verify your findings. Can you prove that this poem was actually transmitted by enemy agents? I understood his concern perfectly. I was the only one who'd heard it. They couldn't deploy resources based solely on my word. What if the enemy deliberately leaked false information to distract them while executing a different plan? I can't prove it, I said honestly. The enemy had broadcast the signal once. They wouldn't repeat it. Only an idiot would. Even if I tuned the radio back to that frequency right now, the poem would be gone. Commander Wei looked disappointed, but not surprised. He turned to Shen Mingjung. What do you think about this? The real question underneath. This is your wife. Do you believe her? Shen Mingjung looked at me. He didn't answer right away. I knew what was going through his mind. He wanted to trust me. He was willing to trust me. But this wasn't about our relationship. This was about his faith, his duty to the country. It was about the safety of hundreds of soldiers, and about something important that was clearly being guarded here. I met his gaze without saying a word. I just waited quietly for his decision. After a minute of silence, Shen Mingjung turned to Commander Wei. Sir, my recommendation is to deploy defenses based on this intelligence. Better safe than sorry. We should also prepare backup contingency plans. Before Commander Wei could respond, a rough-looking man named Lu Jianxi, apparently the commander of another regiment, slammed his hand on the table. I disagree. If this is a trap or the information is fake, the cost to us would be enormous. Can you take responsibility for that? Shen Mingjung asked calmly, And if the information is real, your wife, some random woman cracking enemy intelligence? I don't buy it. For all we know, she could be an enemy plant sent to infiltrate us from the inside. Shen Mingzheng's aura turned deadly. Lu Jianxi, speak with evidence. If you attack Yi personally again, don't blame me for what happens next. What, you gonna hit me? Being some legendary soldier doesn't make you special. This is the military, not a playground for you and your wife. Commander Wei cut them both off. Enough. The enemy hasn't even attacked yet, and we're already falling apart. You're both regimental commanders. Act like it. Shen Mingzheng didn't back down. Commander, Yi discovered this information by accident. She reported it out of patriotism. Whether the intelligence proves true or not, she shouldn't be attacked for it. I agreed to bring her here, so she could help recreate the situation, not to be insulted. If Lu Jianxi doesn't apologize, I'm taking her home right now. Lu Jianxi slammed the table again. Why should I apologize? I'm a regimental commander too, same rank as you. I'm not one of your soldiers. Shen Mingzheng grabbed my hand and headed for the door. Commander Wei stopped us. He turned to Lu Jianxi. Apologize. Shen Mingzheng is right. Comrade Ding Yi showed impressive awareness by discovering and reporting this. We should thank her, not interrogate her. Lu Jianxi's face went red. He refused to speak until Commander Wei added 2 words. That's an order. He grudgingly looked at me.
Saw thee.
I speak bluntly. But your information came from nowhere and it's suspicious. I nodded pleasantly. I understand completely. His face relaxed. He was about to say something like, at least she's sensible, but I wasn't done. When you can't manage to obtain enemy intelligence yourself, and an ordinary woman does it instead, it really highlights how lacking you are. A little resentment is perfectly natural. A middle-aged man who'd been sitting quietly in the corner burst out laughing. Even Sun Dagong couldn't keep his lips from curving, though he didn't dare make a sound. Lu Jianxi's face went purple. He smacked the table again. Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that? Hit a nerve. Getting angry because I told the truth. I kept my voice calm and unhurried. Today I learned that even thick-skinned people can't handle honesty. Then I walked to the conference table, switched on my modified radio, and started rotating the loop antenna. Lu Jianxi wanted to yell at me again, but I held a finger to my lips. Sho. Commander Wei shot him a warning look. After some crackling static, a broadcast came through, one sentence in Chinese, followed by the same sentence in English. Everyone in the room froze. They'd never heard anything like this on a regular radio. Commander Wei grabbed a standard radio with a telescoping antenna and frantically scanned every frequency. Nothing matched what my radio was playing. The room went silent. My modified radio could genuinely pick up broadcasts that normal radios couldn't receive. Sun Dagong blurted out, "Are the enemies sending another coded signal?" I shook my head.
No.
This is just a regular Chinese-English translation broadcast. You understand English? The middle-aged man who'd laughed spoke up. I went to university. We had English classes. A simple explanation, but I caught Shen Mingzheng looking at me with unmistakable pride. Commander Wei asked seriously, "Comrade Ding Yi, you truly modified this radio yourself. I read a lot of books in university. Learned it from there. The station I just tuned into proves this radio can receive frequencies that normal radios can't. But I still can't prove that the poem was an enemy signal. The decision is yours. I've done everything I can. May I leave now?" Once they heard I was a university graduate who spoke English and could rebuild radio equipment, the respect in their eyes visibly increased. Commander Wei thanked me formally and offered an oral commendation. I wrinkled my nose.
Oral commendation?
Commander, are you seriously trying to pay me with empty words? He looked slightly embarrassed but recovered quickly. If this intelligence proves accurate and we successfully counter the enemy, I'll make sure you receive material rewards. That's more like it. The middle-aged man laughed again. This young lady is genuinely entertaining. I studied him more closely. He seemed friendly, but there was an unmistakable authority radiating from him, even more powerful than Commander Wei's presence. He wore no rank insignia, so I couldn't determine his position. The group then moved into strategic planning, which I wasn't cleared to hear. I was sent to wait in another office. After 2 boring hours, Shen Mingjing came out, said nothing, picked me up, and carried me home. Over the next 2 days, he was incredibly busy directing the winter hunt, running training exercises. Word was that a senior leader was visiting his special operations regiment to inspect the troops. I was pretty sure that was just a cover story. After this incident, it was obvious the regiment was guarding something extremely important enough for enemy agents to plan an elaborate heist. But none of that was my problem anymore. I'd done my part. Time to go back to my comfortable little life. That peace didn't last long. Sun Geely came running to my house, panting so hard she could barely string words together. There's someone at the family quarters gate, asking for you. Hurry, I was confused. Who would come looking for me? And waiting at the gate meant they weren't military family. They couldn't get in. Who is it, Sister Sun? She stammered and couldn't get it out. Just tell me, he said. He's your boyfriend. I froze for a second. Then a name surfaced in my mind. Yang Xiong. The original Ding Yi's ex had actually shown up in person. Sun Geely urged me to hurry. A big crowd has gathered at the gate. If this gets out of hand, it'll look really bad. I headed straight for the family quarters gate. From a distance, I could already see Yang Xiong surrounded by layers of women. He was tall enough to stand out above all of them. Before I even got close, I heard Luo Xiufan's loud voice. You say you're Ding Yi's boyfriend? But she's already married. How can she have a boyfriend? Yang Xiong sounded helpless. I'm not lying. We've been together since childhood. Please just call her out for me. I need to talk to her. Luo Xiufan wasn't about to pass up this chance to humiliate me. You'd better explain yourself first. Ding Yi is Commander Shin's wife now, so Yang Xiong started telling everyone their story. Childhood sweethearts, promises to be together forever. A misunderstanding that drove them apart, how the original Ding Yi married Shen Mingjing in a moment of anger. He painted himself as the heartbroken victim. Then he dropped his big move. I came to take Yi home. I'm willing to compensate Commander Shen. I brought 5,000 yuan. If he agrees to the divorce, it's all his. Everyone's eyes nearly popped out. 5,000 yuan was an astronomical sum. Most families here couldn't scrape together a few hundred, even after years of saving. The richest household might have 1 or 2,000. When I appeared, the crowd parted for me like the sea splitting open. Mawan caught Luo Xiufan's eye, then immediately ran off somewhere. I noticed but didn't think much of it at the time. Yang Xiong looked at me with what I assume he thought was a devastatingly romantic gaze. I've come to take you home. Let's go back together. He launched into his rehearsed speech. He said I looked thinner and promised to cook for me. He'd already bought furniture, a refrigerator, a television, a wristwatch, and a camera for me. He knew the original girl loved taking photos. The women around us were practically drooling. They'd only ever heard about refrigerators and TVs on the radio. Some were already imagining themselves in my shoes, choosing this gentle, wealthy man over life in a dirt-walled military compound with a husband who was always gone. Encouraged by their reactions, Yang Xiong kept going. He'd prepared 5,000 yuan as a bride price. If it wasn't enough, he'd add more. He was an only child, so his parents' entire fortune would eventually be theirs. He'd broken things off with the other woman completely. He'd even convinced his mother to accept me. Don't you remember your promise? You said you'd divorce him and come back to me. I'm here now. Come home with me. Are you done? I asked. My voice was cold enough to freeze the air between us. My expression carried a killing intent that clearly unsettled him. The Ding Yi he remembered was spoiled and fierce, but melted into softness around him. This version of me was ice from top to bottom. He tried again, bringing up how the original girl had slit her wrists to force a divorce. All for his sake. He said he'd heard about it, and was deeply moved. He assumed Shen Mingjing had forced me to come here. He promised to make everything up to me. He talked and talked, not noticing that with every word, my eyes grew colder and the murderous aura around me grew thicker. Meanwhile, on the other side of the base, Mawan had found Shen Mingjing. He was in the middle of directing training exercises. Commander Wei, Commissar Zhao, and the mysterious senior officer from the meeting were all present. Ma shouted at the top of her lungs. Commander Shin, your wife is running off with another man. You need to come see this right now. Every soldier on the training field heard it. Shin Mingjing's expression turned to ice. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm not making it up. Some man showed up claiming to be your wife's boyfriend. He's offering you 5,000 yuan for a divorce. Your wife already agreed to leave with him. If you don't hurry, she'll be gone. She yelled so loudly that all the soldiers heard and silently pitied their commander. Shin Mingjing's heart sank. Had the moment he'd been dreading finally arrived? But a small part of him held on to hope. From everything he'd seen since I came to the base, I had principles. I wouldn't just run off.
Would I?
But then he remembered. The original Ding Yi had been willing to die for this man. Compared to death, what were principles? Commissar Zhao offered to hold down the fort. But Shin Mingjing didn't move. He was the commanding officer during a critical period. He couldn't abandon his post. Then the mysterious senior officer spoke up. I'd like to see who has the nerve to interfere with a military marriage. Let's go have a look. Commander Wei immediately agreed. Yes, I want to see who's bold enough to steal the wife of Jiangcheng Military District's finest soldier. So Shin Mingjing, Commander Wei, the senior officer, and Ma Wan all headed for the family quarters gate. The whole way there, Shin Mingjing's mind was in chaos. What if I really asked for a divorce? What were Yang Jiong and I talking about right now? What were we doing? He imagined 100 different scenarios. But what he actually found when he arrived wasn't any of them. When Shin Mingjing and his group arrived at the family quarters gate, they found all the women crowded together, craning their necks toward a small grove of trees nearby. I was nowhere in sight. Ma Wan slapped her thigh gleefully. Oh no, we're too late. Commander Shin, your wife, and that man took off so fast. But they probably haven't gotten far. Let's chase them. Luo Xiofan turned around. No need to chase. They didn't run. It's just... She dragged it out dramatically, savoring every second. Shin Mingjing ignored the theatrics and asked Lu Muden directly. Where is he? Lu Muden sighed and pointed at the grove. Commander Shin, your wife took that man into the trees. She explained awkwardly that I'd told everyone Yang Jiong must really love me to come all this way, so I wanted to give him a special gift he'd never forget. Then I dragged him into the grove. The women tried to follow, but heard sounds coming from inside that made them too embarrassed to get closer. Luo Xiofan jumped in with maximum volume. Oh, Commander Shin, you should have heard it. The noises coming from in there, a man moaning and grunting in broad daylight. In a grove of trees. How shameless can a woman be? Ma Wan piled on. She's putting a green hat on your head. You can't let her get away with this. Shin Mingjing said nothing. He'd imagined many scenarios on the walkover, but this one, me taking Yang Ziong into a grove in broad daylight, had never crossed his mind. He stared at the trees, then started walking toward them. Everyone followed. As they got closer, the sounds became clearer. MMPH, HNNG. Ah, deep, male grunts echoed through the trees. Every woman there turned red. They were all married. They knew exactly what those sounds meant. Or thought they did. Shin Mingjing had never been with a woman, but he understood the implications. His expression was murderous. Every instinct screamed at him to rush in and kill the man. But somewhere inside, a tiny voice spoke. You promised her. You said you'd trust her. No matter what. Even if she held a knife to your heart. That voice grew quieter, but it never disappeared. Commander Wei put a hand on his shoulder. Mingjing, what they're doing is destroying a military marriage. I will personally see that justice is served. Shin Mingjing kept his eyes on the grove. After several agonizing seconds, he spoke. I trust her. Then he walked straight in. That was his answer after the war inside his mind. He'd promised to believe in me. He would keep that promise, no matter how much it hurt. Everyone watching felt sorry for him. Such a good man, still trusting his wife at a moment like this. Some people followed him into the trees. Others stayed behind. And then they all saw what was actually happening. Not a single person had expected this. I was standing there holding a shovel high above my head, about to bring it crashing down on Yang Jiong. He was sprawled face down in the dirt, covered in soil, hands tied behind his back, mouth stuffed with a rag. The only sounds he could make were muffled grunts and groans. Those were the shameless noises everyone had heard. I spotted the crowd and froze mid-swing. "What are you doing here?" That question was aimed at Shen Mingjing. I knew how busy he was these past 2 days. His showing up here was completely unexpected. He looked at me. His eyes were bright, shining with a warmth and tenderness I'd never seen before. I cut him off. To catch me cheating, it took me about half a second to figure out why he was here. Someone must have told him I'd run off with a man. My shovel shifted direction. My eyes narrowed dangerously. If he dared say yes, he was next. He shook his head. "No." The mysterious senior officer standing beside Commander Wei suddenly laughed. "No wonder you said you trusted her. Your wife really is one of a kind. Today she taught every one of us a lesson. Don't believe what you hear. Believe what you see." Hearing that Shen Mingjing had trusted me even before seeing the truth made me feel genuinely satisfied.
Good.
"Since you believe me, go stand over there. Let me finish what I'm doing, then I'll go home with you." I brought the shovel down squarely on Yang Jiong's backside. He let out another muffled groan, tears streaming down his face. His eyes darted desperately around the crowd, head shaking wildly, trying to beg for help. But with the rag stuffed so deep in his mouth, all he could produce was MMPH. Aw. HNNG. When he dared to look for rescue, I raised the shovel again. But Shen Mingjing caught my arm and stopped me. "You won't let me hit him? Do you even know who this is?" He nodded. Of course he knew. This man had haunted their 3-year marriage like a ghost.
How could he not know?
"Then why are you stopping me? Don't tell me you want his 5,000 yuan. Shen Mingjing looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He took the shovel from my hands, sounding almost helpless. "Aren't you tired?" Now that he mentioned it, yeah, I really was. I didn't realize beating someone up was such hard work. Everyone was slowly processing the scene. Luo Xiufan's jaw was on the floor. "You two weren't doing that thing in here? Then how? You didn't even come in to look, but you already knew what was happening. You must have supernatural vision. Forget being a military wife. They should send you to the front lines. You'd save them the cost of binoculars." She couldn't find a comeback. She nudged Ma Wan for backup.
Ma Quan switched tactics.
"Commander Shin's wife, you can't just hit people. Even if your husband is the commander, that doesn't give you the right to do whatever you want." Luo Xiufan jumped back in, turning to Commander Wei. "Brigade Commander, you saw it yourself. She beat this man right in front of you. Imagine what she does when you're not around." Yang Ziong nodded frantically from the ground, looking for sympathy. "Let me explain what actually happened. When he followed me into the grove, he thought I wanted privacy for a romantic reunion. I pulled out a rope and said I wanted to play a game. He got excited, probably thinking things were getting kinky. He let me tie his hands. Then I stuffed a rag in his mouth. Then I grabbed my shovel and started whacking him. He went down face first and never got back up." I looked at Commander Wei. "Sir, I've heard from my husband that the military rewards merit and punishes wrongdoing. Is that right?" He nodded cautiously. I kicked Yang Jiong's prone body with my toe. "This man is Yang Jiong. He came here knowing full well I'm married to a military officer. He publicly offered 5,000 yuan to break up a military marriage. That's a direct attack on the sanctity of military marriages. I beat him to knock some sense into him, to stop him from making a terrible mistake. As Commander Shen's wife, I have a duty to maintain proper values. I couldn't just watch this man dig himself deeper into trouble. So I helped him. In fact, I protected the institution of military marriage and upheld righteousness." "Commander Wei, shouldn't this count as a merit?" Commander Wei's mouth twitched. I had him cornered.
He coughed.
"Well, you're not a soldier, you're a military dependent. You're not under my direct command. So the best I can offer is an oral commendation for your efforts to protect military marriage." My eyes sparkled with a mischievous idea. "So, I'm not under your direct command? Perfect." I snatched the shovel back from Shen Mingjing and brought it down on Yang Ziong's backside again. Nobody saw that coming. They all froze. After each smack, I delivered a line. "Don't worry, Commander Wei, butts have thick padding. Won't cause real damage." Just enough pain to make sure he remembers this lesson and never tries anything this stupid again. Smack. I'm actually saving him from future criminal charges. Practically rehabilitating him. That deserves at least a few more words of commendation, don't you think? Commander Wei glared at Shen Mingjing, his eyes screaming, "Control your wife." He knew Shen Mingjing could have easily stopped me from grabbing the shovel. The man was the military district's top combat soldier. He had reflexes like lightning. He'd deliberately let me take it. Shen Mingjing turned his head away, pretending to see nothing. Commander Wei looked ready to grab the shovel and smack him too. Since Shen Mingjing wouldn't intervene, Commander Wei spoke up himself. "That's enough. Stop." I ignored him and kept going. Smack. "This is for breaking up military marriages." Smack. "This is for trying to buy my husband." Smack. "This is for ruining my reputation." Commander Wei's face darkened considerably. I didn't stop until I was genuinely out of breath after about 15 hits. Shen Mingjing stepped forward and took the shovel. I let him have it. I was done anyway. I turned to Commander Wei with my sweetest smile. "Sir, you did say I'm not under your direct command. I just got a little carried away. If you're unhappy, how about an oral criticism? Or we call it even no commendation, no criticism. Cancel each other out. A few words of scolding wouldn't cost me anything. What mattered was that I'd thoroughly enjoyed myself today." My shameless attitude gave Commander Wei a headache. He wanted to be angry, but he'd painted himself into a corner by saying I wasn't under his jurisdiction. The mysterious senior officer laughed openly. "Young lady, if you were a man, you'd be the most troublesome soldier in the regiment. But I genuinely admire your refusal to take losses and your ability to think on your feet. It's a shame you're not a diplomat." I shook my head vigorously. "Sir, please spare me. I remembered from my past life that a certain high-ranking diplomat got publicly denounced in a few years. No thank you. This lifetime, I'm committed to being a salted fish. Nothing else." Then Luo Xiaofan had to open her mouth again. "Commander Wei, this is obviously Ding Yi's fault. If she hadn't seduced that man, why would he come looking for her? She's been trying to divorce Commander Shen for ages. Everybody knows it. She still didn't understand why Commander Wei let me off so easily, or why that unknown middle-aged man seemed to carry even more authority than the brigade commander himself. She was determined to brand me as a loose woman. Even if Shen Mingjing wouldn't divorce me, she wanted to destroy my reputation in the family quarters forever." I looked at Luo Xiaofan and laughed. "Oh, you know everything again? First you had supernatural vision, now you have supernatural hearing too? Forget being a military wife. They should send you to the front lines. Save the army the cost of surveillance equipment." Everyone around us cracked up. Luo Xiaofan's face cycled through every shade of red and purple. Commander Wei put on his stern face and told everyone to leave. "The military will investigate this matter. Everyone go home." The crowd dispersed immediately. Luo Xiaofan and Ma Wan wanted to stay, but didn't dare defy a direct order from the brigade commander. Unlike me, I was the only one still standing there. Commander Wei sighed. "You've hit him, vented your anger, and your merits and demerits cancel out. What are you still doing here? Go home." I pointed at Yang Zhiyong on the ground. "What happens to him?" "We'll send him home tomorrow. You already beat him up. He didn't actually succeed in doing anything, so this matter ends here. Besides, if this gets blown up bigger, it won't look good for Mingjing either." I gave Yang Zhiyong one last kick for good measure, then grudgingly headed home. Commander Wei had Yang Zhiyong dragged away, then turned to Shen Mingjing. "Where on earth did you find this wife of yours?" Shen Mingjing answered at full volume. "Reporting, sir. In the provincial capital." Commander Wei glared at him. "Your wife drives me crazy, and now you're doing it too. You two really are a perfect match." The mysterious senior officer chuckled. "Old Wei, your life won't be boring anymore. That's a good thing." He patted Shen Mingjing's shoulder. "Your wife is no ordinary woman. No wonder you staked a military pledge on her." I didn't know it at the time, but Shen Mingjing had been put in charge of the November 3rd counter-operation against the enemy agents. Most people opposed his plan to deploy based on my intelligence, but he insisted and backed it with a formal military pledge, meaning if he was wrong, he'd accept full punishment. Shen Mingjing saluted and requested 30 minutes of leave. The senior officer, who turned out to be the newly appointed division commander Gao Weiman, approved it. He'd originally come here secretly to inspect classified research, but after I intercepted the enemy signal, he suspected the agents were after the research data and decided to stay. On the walk home, Shen Mingjing noticed the shovel in his hand and frowned. It was the same one I'd taken up the mountain. He hadn't seen it since the night he rescued me from the tiger. Now it had mysteriously reappeared. Another question without an answer. When he walked in, I was sitting at the table, sunflower seeds in one hand, malted milk in the other. The tension drained from his face. I set down my cup, walked up to him, and kissed him on the cheek. You performed well today. That's your reward. His face went bright red. I grinned. Shen Mingjing, your own wife kisses you and you blush? What's that about? He looked at me deeply. Don't you regret it? Regret what? A trashy ex-boyfriend isn't worth my regret. He has money, education, you grew up together, he understands you, he treats you well. Watching his mouth keep listing another man's supposed virtues was getting on my nerves. My body moved before my brain could think. I stood on my tiptoes and pressed my lips against his. This was the second time I'd done this to shut him up. The first time, he'd been too stunned to react before I pulled away. This time, he only froze for a split second, then he took control. I'd only kissed him to stop the Yang Jiong praise session. But when he flipped the dynamic, my mind went completely blank. In my past life, I'd never dated anyone. Never kissed anyone. Since arriving here, I'd enjoyed teasing Shen Mingjing, but I was always the one in charge. Suddenly being on the receiving end sent electricity through my entire body. My legs went weak. Just as I was about to stumble, his arm wrapped around my waist and caught me. He pulled back slightly and whispered near my ear, "Thank you for choosing to stay." He'd never know what those words truly meant to me. Before, he'd refused divorce to protect his career. Now he wanted to stay married purely because he liked me, because he wanted to spend his life with me. I leaned into his chest and said softly, "Shen Mingjing, don't feel inferior. Don't sell yourself short. In my eyes, you're the best." I felt his whole body tremble. Those words hit harder than any "I like you" ever could. We stood there holding each other in silence. His 30 minutes were almost up. He kissed my forehead. "I have to go back to training. I can't come home tonight. Tomorrow, stay inside. Don't go anywhere." I nodded. "Be safe. I'll be waiting for you." Tomorrow was November 3rd, the day the enemy agents planned to strike. In the entire family quarters, only I knew what was coming. Everyone else went about their day normally. The only instruction was that nobody could leave the compound, but that was routine during military exercises, so nobody thought anything of it. Early the next morning, I heard gunfire. It echoed across the mountains, wave after wave, then gradually faded. I waited at home for Shen Mingjing to return. But instead of my husband, I got an uninvited guest. A blood-covered man had crawled down from the mountain and slipped into the family quarters. He was looking for somewhere to hide. And of all the houses he could have picked, he chose mine. When our eyes met, he raised his gun.